who have been participating in the operation of the NGCP aggravated by that publication coming from one of the major stockholders of the NGCP, that is the State Grid Corporation of China. That is a manifestation, Mr. Chair. To continue, Mr. Chair, NGCP, nasan po ba ang switchboard ninyo? You don't know?
Your Honor, it's a technical term. We have technical people here.
May we ask the technical people?
Your Honor, definition? May we have a clarification
Yes,
insofar as that term
we know, okay. So you're calling in the technical people to help out. Can we have their names and what position do they occupy in the organization? Sino po sila?
Good afternoon. I'm Clark Agustin from the...
Pakilakas lang po.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I'm Clark Agustin from the System Operations. If you're referring to the control
From
system...
what? From what?
System Operations.
He taken his oath, Comsec, please take the oath of the of Mark. Tumayo po kayo.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this congressional inquiry, so help you God?
I swear.
Thank you.
Answer the question of the Honorable Luistro.
Your Honor, if they're referring to the control system, our SCADA system, we have 3 control centers in the different regional grids. We have in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao.
How many switchboard or control system do you have?
1 for each region, ma'am. So
One for
actually,
each region.
We have 3 control
What
centers.
controls the switch or the control system per region? Meron ka pa bang main control that controls all the switch and the control system of all these regions? I believe yes.
Yes, ma'am. We have the control center for each region, and then we have substations for the equipment level control. For the system level control, we use the control centers using our SCADA system.
Where is the system control?
From the control center, ma'am.
Where is the control center?
For Luzon, we have here in Diliman. For Visayas, in Banilad. And in Mindanao, in Cagayan de Oro.
These control systems which you mentioned, they have the capacity to cause the blackout of electricity. Am I correct?
Not to cause a blackout, but to control our transmission assets. And
If I want to
substations.
turn off the electricity, I just need to switch off the control system. Am I correct?
1 by 1 per equipment. You
One
can do
by
that.
one.
Yes, ma'am. We can control it remotely.
So, kanina you mentioned about the main control. How many main controls do you have?
We have a control center monitoring and controlling different equipment of the grid.
How many main controls do you have?
So we have a system, pag-control po, ma'am, not necessarily, as I get from your question, isang button, wala po siyang ganon. So kasi different parts po ng grid, different assets, different control. So if you want to operate a certain circuit breaker, kailangan mong operate that specific breaker.
But
A
at least
specific
if,
feeder, yeah.
if I turn off one of those, did you say assets
Yeah.
of that control system, then the electricity will not work anymore. If I turn off one of the several assets of the main control system, the electricity will not work anymore.
If you intentionally isolate a specific area, that specific area will not have electricity, will not have supply of power for that specific area associated to that equipment.
To simplify, Mr. Chair, that main control that you are talking about is responsible to make the electricity available or otherwise.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you said that you have main control in Luzon, in Visayas, and Mindanao. My next question is, what is this operational computer in Nanjing?
I'm not aware of that, ma'am. Operational.
Operational computer in Nanjing. Nanjing, China, I believe.
I'm not aware of that, ma'am.
Well, based on reports, there is such a thing as operational computer in Nanjing, which is connected to the server in the Philippines that can control the availability of electricity in the country. Can you comment on this?
I'm not aware of that.
Is
Control,
it
yeah.
possible that this information is exclusive to the Chinese counterparts and not shared to the Filipino counterparts?
Based on our configurations of our control center, this cannot be controlled remotely through overseas, not even here, yes, here in
What is your basis for saying that it cannot be controlled remotely? Are you that expert?
Based on my experience and my knowledge, our SCADA system is actually isolated, ma'am. It's not connected in the internet, so you cannot easily control it remotely.
Without
Based
for-
on the design and the architecture.
I understand. With all due respect, but considering that our IT infrastructure, tama ba, is provided by the Chinese counterpart, or should I say, a Chinese corporation, I humbly submit that no matter how knowledgeable Filipino citizens are, the one who created the system know more and know better than the one operating the same. As a general statement, do you agree?
No, ma'am.
Ibig sabihin mo, you're the one using the system of China, mas marami kang alam kesa nag-create ng system?
No, ma'am. As I've said,
This is a
based-
general statement, NGCP. It is not my intention to undermine the technical know-how of people from the NGCP, but logically speaking, ang sabi, the creature cannot become higher than its creator. I believe that the one who created knows more and knows better about the system than the one using the system. Do you agree?
I disagree, ma'am. Say for example, bawa meron akong laptop, computer, it's made in the US or in China, that does not mean the manufacturer can remotely use my device. Kung analogy po, ma'am, ang pinag-uusapan.
No, I'm talking about the system as a whole and considering its use, the use of the system, considering that they were the ones who created it, it is my humble submission that no matter how expert we are, the one who created knows better about the system. That is a manifestation. We respect your position. To continue, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chairman,
Romy Ako.
with the indulgence of the Honorable Luis Tro, because I'm interested in the point she was making a while ago. I did not get it clearly, yung sagot po ng resource person. may I ask some clarificatory questions, Mr. Chair?
If the Honorable Luisto will allow, Honorable Luisto, there were questions that he would like to ask for clarification. Yes, the Honorable Akop, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sinabi po nyo kanina, 10 yung control points. Tama po ba yung pagkarinig ko? For the entire country, 10 yung control points. Tama po ba yung pagkarinig ko?
Sir, hindi 10 as in 10?
Yes.
Hindi
10.
po.
Ah?
Hindi po. We have three control centers, one for each region.
One for
One for Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao.
And walang central control point to control the 3 control points.
Meron po kaming convergence point, yung central grid operations, pero it's just monitoring the interchange points.
Yeah, but
Wala po. For each region, you're correct, sir.
so if you decide to cut off the power for the entire country, wala po yun.
Wala po.
Wala po. So it's for the 3 control points.
Yes,
Kung
sir.
gusto nyong patayin ang power sa Visayas, po pwede.
Yes, sir. Using the control center, one
Yes.
by one, you turn off the circuit breakers.
So
you isolate
walang
the plants.
central control point to control yung 3 control points.
Yes, sir. If you're referring to central control point as a single control, single button, wala pong ganun.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Honorable Akop. Thank you. So, the Honorable Jinky Luisto, you still have the floor.
Mr. Chair, just a interjection. With the indulgence of Congresswoman
Yes,
Luistro,
yes, agreed.
na medyo nakiliti lang ako dun sa tanong ni Congressman Acop. If I may ask, this is a technical question. Kasi kanina ang sagot, walang central control system, no, to turn off, let's say, the whole power system of the country, correct?
Sir, we have a control center, pero walang single button to turn
It off, okay.
Yes.
Now, can anyone just turn it off like that? Anong proseso pag turn off niyan? Sinong may approval?
Yun.
We have on-duty system operators.
So yung duty lang ang nando doon. Halimbawa, yung naka-on duty, kinurap nung isang kalaban ng bansa. At sinabing, patayin mo lahat nung yung area ng kuryente nung area yon. Can they do that?
What do you mean by corrupt? In-instruct?
Oh, in-instruct. Oh.
They should not follow.
Huh?
It's not part of their duty, sir.
No. What was that again?
Hindi. Ibig sabihin, sir, how could they do that? Why would they follow the instruction of other people
No,
from other countries?
in simple analogy, ganito lang yan. Ano? Sabi mo kasi, it can just be turned off just like that.
Yes, sir.
Di ba? Now, ang tanong ko, sino ang pwedeng magsabi i-turn off yan? At kung merong ganyang order, ano yung procedure o yung proseso para i-turn off yan?
Yes, sir. We have procedures on how we operate our equipment and especially the grid. May mga responsibility po yung system operator as outlined dyan sa
Hindi.
Philippine Grid Code, and then meron kaming mga internal procedures.
Okay, ganito na lang, para yun sa mga nanonood, no? Halimbawa, kaya nga binigyan kita example Sabi mo yung duty, ano yun? Ang sabi mo? What did you say? The
Yung
duty?
system operator on duty, meron po
Okay,
kaming
system
dispatcher na
operator
tinatawag.
on duty. Siya ang may kapangyarihan para i-switch on or i-switch off yung power supply, correct?
Yes, opo.
Okay. Dahil siya on duty, tinakot ng isang terrorist group, no? Tinutukan, tinakot. Sinabi niyang patayin mo yung switch na yan, turn it off. Can they do that?
Hypothetical po, kung halimbawang nasakop nga, nandun siya sa control center, that's possible. Kasi ma-operate niya manually.
Ano nga yung procedure pag turn off?
Meron po tayong...
Who decides? Is that the decision of the duty, ano yun? Duty system manager o ganyan?
Yes, sir,
Decision
opo.
lang niya yun?
It's a decision based on established procedures po. May guidelines po tayo.
May established procedure pala eh. Ano nga yung procedure? Ano yung procedure?
Kung halimbawa po, merong maintenance, pwede niyang patayin yon. May emergency, may risk sa life, sa equipment, pwede niya pong patayin.
Oh, I raised a hypothetical scenario na terrorist group came into that place. Tinakot yung operator. Sabi, patayin mo yung ano, kaya niyang gawin yon.
Kaya niya po.
Oh, so yun ang tinatanong namin.
Yeah, if it's possible,
so ibig
he can do
sabihin, the power to switch it on or switch it off ay nasa isang tao lang doon sa duty manager.
Not necessarily isang tao, isang team. Usually po, 3 tao yung naka-duty.
O isa, dalawa, tatlo, ibig sabihin nasa kamay lang nila ang desisyon. So walang security feature, wala man lamang safety measure or security measure to prevent that hypothetical scenario from happening. Is that correct?
Sir, yung details po, pwede naman namin i-discuss kasi kung sabi nyo nga, security yung involved. Pero public po kasi baka po hindi namin basta-basta ma-disclose yung process nung...
Sige,
Apo.
let's not go into the details. Yun lang gusto namin malaman. Kung may isang nasa kamay lang ng isa, dalawa, 3 tao pala, pwede nang i-switch yun eh.
Yes, sir.
Alam mo, very critical yung issue that we are discussing here because one, bukod dun sa issue that Congressman Dan Fernandez raised and the chair raised, the question that actually needs answers is who controls NGCP? Is it the Filipino or the Chinese? Based on documents, sinasabi na Chinese kasi sila yung ano kaya nga we're digging deeper. That's why we're asking questions. Now you're telling us na yung meron palang power to switch it on or off is only in the hands of one or a few. Therefore, masyadong vulnerable yung sistemang yan. But I will ask that question later and elaborate on that, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Congresswoman Jinky Luistro and Mr. Chair.
Luistro still has the floor. The Honorable Luistro.
Mr. Chair, I came across this NARI, the one which provides the IT infrastructure of NGCP. Does NGCP confirm this? NARI.
Mr. Chair, I am not familiar.
May we place back on board the technical officer of NGCP.
Mr. Clark Agustin, please take the chair of Attorney Malyari.
Do you confirm that the IT infrastructure of NGCP is now NARI?
For the IT, it's not NARI, but we have equipment branded as NARI.
Okay.
Yeah.
Equipment is branded as
Some.
NARI,
Some equipment,
Some.
not all, yes, ma'am.
but you deny that IT infrastructure is NARI.
I'm not sure about the specific brand of our IT. And it's not, I think not supplied by only one brand, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I wish to remind our resource person that he is testifying under oath. So I hope you are giving truthful information to this committee. I understand that prior to NGCP, the IT infrastructure is ESCADA, a Filipino corporation. However, upon the assumption of NGCP, they converted to NARI, which is a Chinese corporation. Now, I wish to ask, what is the reason why you switched from ESCADA a Filipino corporation to NARI, a Chinese corporation?
Ma'am, I would just like to clarify. IT is different from the SCADA. So, SCADA is our control system. That's our system control and
Do you
data
still have that
acquisition.
ESCADA
Yes,
up
ma'am.
to now?
Yes, ma'am. We have a SCADA. Yes.
Are you still using ESCADA?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, all power utilities uses SCADA to control their power system.
If ESCADA has this capacity,
Opo, SCADA stands for System Control and Data Acquisition. You use it to monitor and control the power system in the case of NGCP.
and you're still using that,
Yes, ma'am. We need the SCADA to control our power system.
then why resort to other Chinese corporations if ESCADA has the capacity to provide the necessary technical aspect of the NGCP corporation?
The
Why resort to NARI if ESCADA is still dependable?
Ma'am, our SCADA is just the tool. It's the system we use to control the power grid. So
How about NARI?
actually the brand of our SCADA as of now is
Mr.
Nari.
Chair, just a point of information para lang magkaintindihan. Hindi sila nagkaintindihan eh.
If you will shed clarification,
Yes.
okay, you're acknowledged.
As a point of information, Mr. Chair, yung SCADA, ginagamit yun lahat sa mga public utilities, either distribution or transmission. Ang ibig sabihin lang ng SCADA, yung sinabi kanina, yung sistema. Pero yung mga mga equipment, pwede namang iba-ibang brand yun. SCADA is not a brand. It is a system of control. So, kung halimbawa, ikaw yung chairman ngayon, ikaw yung SCADA, ikaw nagko-control ng dito. But we can use different brand of equipments. So, yun lang yun. It is not a brand. It is a system, control system.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Dago. The Honorable Jinky. you
Mr.
have the
Chair,
floor.
I acknowledge that we are dealing with a very technical matter. So, to give opportunity to people who are not endowed with technical know-how, I wish to suggest, Mr. Chair, that we conduct an ocular inspection of the NGCP IT infrastructure, including the system, and perhaps we can invite experts to guide the committee members in evaluating whether this system are the one which really are in main control of the operation of the NGCP, one which is Chinese-owned, or just equipments being used by Filipino citizens. That is a recommendation, a suggestion, Mr. Chair, from this humble representation.
Noted. We will make the representation for us to be able to make an ocular.
Mr. Chair, I wish to conclude on this point as my other questions has something to do with NARI, which information that I have is the IT infrastructure of NGCP. And with that, Mr. Chair, I wish to make this final manifestation that with all due respect to our esteemed colleagues and our resource persons, but it is indeed my humble submission that while we, in the face of the general information sheet of NGCP, only 40% is Chinese-owned, considering, however, the presence of Chinese citizens, one as chairman, the other two as evaluators of bid, the other one as chief technical officer, and NARI, which I believe is Chinese IT infrastructure, it is my humble submission, Mr. Chair, that it seems that the control over the NGCP has been compromised already in favor of foreign nationals. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Honorable Jinky Luistro. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Junicio. Ernest Junicio is now... okay. So he will do a swap. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Suarez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to inquire, did Congresswoman Jinky Luistro move that we do an ocular inspection to the NGCP facilities?
Suggestion. A manifestation. There was no motion.
Can I therefore push forward the motion that we visit the NGCP facilities and do an ocular inspection, Mr. Chair? So moved.
Second
There's
the
a
motion.
Duly seconded. The Chair, no objections. The motion of the Honorable David Suarez for an ocular inspection is hereby approved.
Okay. And
point
is
of
it
order.
also,
Mr. Chairman,
The
When-
Honorable
when?
Congressman
J.J.
Fernandez,
Suarez still has the floor.
when you had your chance, I was quiet and still. Maybe while I've had my time, you can be quiet and still as well.
With the indulgence of the deputy,
Excuse
just
me,
clarification.
Congressman Dagook.
Ano lang,
You've
clarification.
had 2 clarifications. I haven't even had 2 minutes of speaking.
I-clarify ko lang sana, Mr. Chair, kung sa tatlong island, sa tatlong control ba yung ocular. Yun lang. Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, Mr. Chair, I was gonna move to that actually, but since tinanong na rin na Mr. Dagook yung susunod ko pong tanong at hindi na nakapag-antay na itanong ko, maaari po ba, Mr. Chair, na maliban sa pagbisita po natin sa facilities ng NGCP, makapagdala din po tayo ng mga organisasyon at mga tauhan na may technical capabilities that can properly guide the committee in our ocular inspection, Mr. Chair. So move.
Duly seconded. The Chair, no objection. Motion is approved. We will have now to, I was advised by DOE that there are some security protocols for this. And we have to be able to do this correctly, so we will prepare a letter. We will coordinate with you on the ocular inspection. Okay, we understand that there are some issues that has to be addressed, but I think the question really is who would have control in case that button has to be turned off or turned on. I think that's where it goes. The Honorable Suarez, you still have the floor.
Thank you
Unless
very-
you're willing to swap already. Are you done? Not yet?
No, I'm not yet done.
Please proceed.
I'm not even starting, Mr. Chair.
My
Anyway,
apologies.
Mr. Chair, again to NGCP, I would just like to take off from the points raised by Congresswoman Jinky Luistro because indeed, when it comes to control of NGCP, security, sovereignty are primordial concern. Kanina po, NGCP, nabanggit niyo po na sa kasalukuyan, sino pong tumatayong chairman ng NGCP?
Your Honor, I'm holding now the company's GIS for the year 2024, and it says here, Zhu Guangshao.
So,
Chairman.
Zhu Guangshao stands as chairman, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And then, if we're looking at the same document, can we just run through the other directors and officers? Can you just go read them one by one?
Mr. Chair, I will read the name and the position.
Yes, please.
Number 1, Zhu Guangshao, Chairman. Number 2, Roberto Cayuto Jr., Vice Chairman. Number 3, Henry T. C. Jr., Vice Chairman. Number 4, Jose T. Pardo, not an officer. Number 5, Ambassador Francis Chua, not an officer. Number 6, Anthony L. Almeda, President and CEO/COW. Number 7, Attorney Paul P. Sagayo Jr., not an officer. Number 8, Yao Yao Sheng, not an officer. Number 9, Wang Li Jin, not an officer. Number 10, Li Xinhua, not an officer. Number 11, Nanette Nancy G. Bugnosen, Chief Financial Officer. Number 12, Rico C. Vega, OIC Chief Technical Officer. Number 13, Karen S. Ong, Corporate Secretary. Number 14, Ronald Delan P. Concepcion, Assistant Corporate Secretary.
Yes. Okay. So thank you very much. And while looking at the document, Mr. Chair, I noticed that of the 14 individuals mentioned, 4 of them are Chinese of nationality. Is this correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And you also confirm, Mr. Chairman, that NGCP 36% is state grid owned. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, also based on this GIS, the State Grid International Development Limited, 36.30, but there are nominal shares, Mr. Chair, for the...
So 36% is owned by the state grid.
Yes,
Correct.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. And who owns majority of the state grid of China?
That I do not have detail, Mr. Chair, that already pertains to...
Can somebody from NGCP answer this question?
Mr. Chair, for the ones that are present here, and considering that we are from NGCP, Mr. Chair, I don't think anyone from NGCP will be able to respond to the shareholding insofar as who owns State Grid International
No.
Development.
Because it is
Limited
very
Hong Kong.
important for us to know who owns the state grid. Is it privately owned? Is it government owned by the Chinese government? Who owns the state grid?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think there's already an order for an issuance of a subpoena.
Well, anyway, I am reading an article here that says the State Grid Corporation of China is 91.68% owned and controlled by the Chinese Central State-Owned Assets Supervision and Administration Commission. So can you confirm this? That 91% is
Apologies,
owned by the...
Mr. Chair, I cannot confirm your statement
Okay.
for lack of knowledge.
Okay, but in any case, can you just give me information on this on the next hearing?
Mr. Chair, most likely we may be able to get a semblance of a response to that when we able to get the corporate documents.
Kasi, ma'am, alam mo, napaka mahalagang malaman natin kung sino may-ari nung 36% na yon o yung 40% na yon. Kung yung ba isang pribadong individual o yung ba ay isang pamahalaan. Kasi magkaiba po yun. Magkaiba po yun. At hindi po ako naniniwala na hindi nyo po alam kung sino po ang may-ari ng state grid. Para naman po napakahirap tanggapin na sa napakatagal na panahon na kinakatawanan nyo ang NGCP, hindi nyo man lang alam kung sino po ang nasa likuran ng state grid. How long have you been working for NGCP?
Started in 2019, Your Honor.
Therefore, for the past 5
5
years. Okay. Anyway, NGCP, next question. 40% is Chinese-owned, correct?
Confirmed, Mr. Chair.
So how was it possible that the chairman of NGCP was able to be elected as chairman when their shares only represent not even half or minority of the company. Oftentimes, the majority shareholders would be able to elect their chairman. How is it here in NGCP, a minority share was able to hold chairmanship of the company?
The particulars, Mr. Chair, I have no information. But as a whole, the board of directors can indeed elect who they want to be the chairman of the corporation.
Understood.
Conceptually,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Understood. The board of directors would elect. Now, isn't it quite ironic that a minimum share, a minority shareholder will hold the highest position in the company?
Mr. Chair, insofar as the composition of the board of directors, the chairman, Mr. Chair, from what I understand, nagpe-preside lang po siya. So, not much
But no.
functions.
Yeah, but regardless, di ba? That's the chairman. 60% Filipino-owned yan. Mas gugustuhin ko na yung chairman ko Pilipino. Bakit ko ibibigay sa dayuhan yan? 40% lang yung kanilang hawak. Can I also ask, Mr. Chair, if indeed Attorney Malyari's testimony is correct, can I also subpoena, not naman subpoena, but request, Mr. Chair, the minutes of the elections of how the board conducted themselves, Mr. Chair? So moved. Mr. Chairman. No, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
Second, Mr. Chair.
To ask for the minutes.
I'm sorry. So are you addressing that to Attorney Malyari?
Yes.
Okay. So, Attorney Malyari, there's a motion, duly seconded. The chair in objection. Please submit the minutes as requested by this committee.
Kasi nakakapagtaka lang po, Mr. Chair, na minority share ka kaso lang ikaw may hawak ng pinakamataas na posisyon. Totoo na hinalal ka doon, actually yun ang mas nakakapagtaka. Bakit ipagkakatiwala yon sa isang dayuhan at hindi sa Pilipino? Kung mas malaki at mas malakas ang boses, mas natural na ibigay ito sa mas may malaking interest sa kumpanya. Hindi po ba, Attorney Malyari?
Mr. Chair, again, this depends on the agreement amongst the members of the board of directors, Mr. Chair.
Yes, precisely. So anyway, so can we just ask for the minutes of how the elections was conducted among the board of directors and the officers of NGCP, just so that we can get a feel of how it transpired?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Attorney Malyari, kasama po sa mga opisyal ninyo si Liu Zhangqiang bilang Assistant Technical Officer. Siya din po ang kumakatawan sa operation and maintenance. Tama po ba ito?
Based on the GIS dated 2024, I'm holding, it's not reflected here, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, in my notes, he's part of your company. Can you enlighten me, Mr. Mamalyari, when it comes to projects of NGCP, what is the process of approving projects of NGCP?
Your Honor, 1 minute. Mr. Chair, I yield the floor to our P&E, Mr. Chair.
Okay, session resumes. Who is speaking now? For NGCP. Ano po pangalan nila? Ano po pangalan?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I am Christian Ereño, the AVP and Deputy Head of the Transmission Planning Department of NGCP.
Okay. So, may please rise for the oath to be administered by the COMSEC.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this congressional inquiry, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Jay Suarez.
So, ang tanong ko po, sir, sorry, hindi ko po nakuha yung pangalan po ninyo.
Christian po.
Christian.
Ereño. Ereño. E-R-E-N-O.
Christian na lang po, okay lang? Parehas naman malapad yung noon natin eh, kaya Christian Ereño. So, Mr. Ereño, kanina na itanong ko, paano po ba ang proseso sa pag-approve ng mga proyekto ng NGCP?
Okay po. So, marami pong process. Mayroon pong conceptualization stage. Dun po pumapasok yung department namin, yung transmission planning. Ina-assess po namin yung
On that point lang so department nyo.
yung sa planning
Oo.
po.
Ikaw ang head ng department mo?
Deputy head po. Deputy head.
Sino po yung pinaka officer in
Yung-
charge ng department nyo?
Si Reddy Remorosa po.
Reggie,
Reddy.
okay. And then, next phase,
Okay. So once ma-identify po namin yung mga kinakailangang projects to address, let's say, yung load growth or generation entry, reliabilities, dumadaan po siya sa... So kailangan po kasing i-approve ng ERC before we proceed with the project. So ang kailangan po naming magawa, unang-una po, ma-finalize yung components, yung timeline, at saka po yung kung magkano po yung project. So dumadaan po yun sa planning and engineering group. May ibang departments po after us.
so sino naman po yung head ng department na yun?
Sa engineering cost management department, si Miss Vicky Dolot po.
Sino?
Vicky Dolot.
Okay. Next,
So once magawa po yun, we file it to ERC. And once approved, doon na po ma-implement po yung project. So mayroon pong construction kaming group.
kaso
Iba
lang,
naman po yun.
siyempre, bago nyo mag-construct, bibilihin nyo muna yung lupa, di ba?
Opo, iba rin po yung yung in charge po sa right of way.
Kunyari naman po, na-identify nyo na ayos na yung specifications, alam nyo na itatayo ninyo, ngayon bibilhin nyo yung lupa. Sino naman po mag-evaluate nun?
Yung right of way department po yung in charge doon sa acquisition po ng lupa.
So let's say request for purchase of lands. Yun yung department na task doon.
Opo.
Okay?
So kailangan po nila
At sino naman po ang head nun?
Ruby Ventura. Ruby Ventura.
Your Honor, OIC ng right of way namin is Attorney Ruby Ventura.
OIC.
Ng right of way department.
Who used to be the head of this?
Umalis na po, wala na po siya sa
Oo.
NGCP. Nag-resign na po.
Okay. You may continue.
Apo. So, yung pong right of way, before po nila magawa yung sa right of way, kailangan po ma-finalize kung saan ba talaga, let's say, dadaan yung transmission line at saan po itatayo yung mga substations. So, yun po, meron po kaming engineering design, under po doon ay yung survey division. So sila po yung mag-check with all the other alternatives and then magkakaroon po ng final kung saan po yung ruta ng linya or kung saan po itatayo yung substation.
Pwede niyo po kaming maliwanagan, sino po si Mr. Wenbo? Wenbo. Wenbo. Sino po si Mr. Wenbo?
Your Honor, as for myself, I do not know. I will let Mr. Ireño answer for that question, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, the reason why I ask who this individual is because I have documents here from NGCP addressed to the president of the company from their chief technical officer, whose name is Wenbu. And the subject of the document is request for approval of authority to purchase lands and land rights using the preferred valuations for EB Magalona, Bacolod for a 230 kilowatt transmission line project, part of the Cebu Negros Panay Backbone Project, Stage 1. So, kaya ko po kanina tinatanong kung paano at yung proseso ng pagdadaan ng proyekto at tinatanong kung sino yung mga nag-head ng bawat opisina na yon. Nakakapagtaka po, bakit hindi nyo po pinangalanan itong si Mr. Wenbu? At mukhang si Mr. Wenbu din ang nagre-request sa mga acquisition ng mga proposed site expansion ninyo, hindi lamang dito sa Negros Panay Backbone, pati po sa Las Piñas sa Bote Substation. Pangalan niya rin po.
Your Honor, the date of the document is 2014.
Yes.
Perhaps if we could look back to the our GIS for 2014, perhaps his name may appear there, Mr. Chair.
Is it
But
I just find it a little bit how do you say it? It leaves a very bad taste in the mouth. That even to decisions of this nature in a company running basic utilities in our country, such decisions have to be made by a national, Chinese national. Bakit hindi po ba ito pwede ipagkatiwala sa Pilipino? Pati po ba yung pagbibili ng lupa? Sila na rin po ang magdidesisyon? Sila din po mag-a-approve? Bakit po ganon? Ganon nyo po ba pinatatakbo ang NGCP? Kasi una, lumalabas, ang pinaka nagpapatakbo nito, dayuhan, as chairman. Tapos pati itong mga desisyon na maliliit na pagpapabili ng lupa, pag-expand ng mga acquisitions ng mga backbone ninyo, dayuhan pa rin po magdidesisyon. Ano na po nangyari sa Pilipino? Ano nangyari na po sa Pilipinas?
Mr. Chair, ako ngayon, ang masasabi ko, hindi po ganyan yung proseso. Wala pong Chinese executive or managerial, holding managerial position. So, ito po, 2014, if we may be allowed to shed more light on this, kasi po, hindi ako familiar sa dokumento, Mr. Chair, but, and as I have said earlier, I came in 2019. there can be an explanation for this, Mr. Chair. Pero ngayon, Mr. Chair, wala po kaming nasa opisina ng Mr. Wenbo. Hindi po siya ang for authority to purchase land. Wala na pong hindi po ganito yung proseso ngayon, Mr. Chair.
Well, you know what, Mr. Chair, madaling sabihin yon, but of course, documents don't lie. And we find ourselves in a very peculiar situation right now where sovereignty is a very sensitive topic in our country. Right now, just across Zambales, where Congressman Jay Kong-hoon represents, we spotted again one of the largest Chinese warships. So are they actually really in our seas, or are they actually in our system? Are they even deciding certain decisions that should be left for Filipinos to decide? These are issues that are very sensitive to me, Mr. Chair, dahil ang maapektuhan po dito ay bawat Pilipino. Kaya nga gusto ko rin po malaman, Mr. Chair, kung papaano po ba ang proseso ng pagdedesisyon at kung sino ang nagdedesisyon para sa NGCP. So, anyway, Mr. Chair, I will leave that point and I will proceed to the next. NGCP, balikan lang po natin yung DOE. If I may, Mr. Chair, I'm wrapping up. Okay. Maybe another, I should be done by around 8 o'clock, so not to worry. DOE, I just want to go back to the performance evaluation of NGCP. Who determines the projects that NGCP should put up? Are we following a power development plan based on a Philippine development plan? Can you please enlighten me?
Well, Mr. Chair, on the hierarchy, di ba may Philippine development plan tayo? And under the Philippine development plan, there is a Philippine energy plan. And under the Philippine energy plan, there's several plans there, which are the different aspects of energy, which transmission, generation, distribution, no? And under the transmission, TDP, no? Meron din kang sinusunod na grid code, which is yun yung Biblia. I think the Power Boys know better about this, or even ERC. Yun yung guide, let's say, of the technical aspects of the grid. Like for example, when Panay blackout happened, yun yung sinusunod in protocols. Now, the TDP is based on is interrelated. So, sinusundan yan dapat yung kung ano yung the trajectory for generation, saka yung demand. Now, who prepares that? That will be Transco, but now NGCP. And then NGCP is supposed to do it in consultation or coordination under their concession with Transco. And then sasubmit nila yan sa DOE for approval, sir. So those specifies already like which projects, ilang voltahe niya, tapos kailan siya dapat matatapos.
So what you're telling me is NGCP determines their own targets per year. Is that right to understand, Yusek Garin?
Mr. Chair, not exactly unilaterally, kasi you have to coordinate or synchronize that with the rest of the other plans. Kaya nga dapat it should have been a practice, no? Na kung sinabi mo na yan by 2020 na 25 ang completion, and the generation companies kasi look at TDP also. So kailangan yan hindi gumagalaw kasi magpapatayo sila ng coal power plant or whatever power plant, they will say na doon tayo magpatayo kasi nandun yung
Ikaw ba, Yusek Garin naniniwala na dahil sa moving targets yung hindi pagkukomplete ng mga proyektong ito, naka-epekto po ito sa kaunlaran ng ating bansa?
Mr. Chair, yes, Mr. Chair. Because it affects the generation companies.
Because like for example, my good friend Congressman Rufus Rodriguez was very appreciative of the fact that Mindanao was finally connected to the Visayas. But when I looked back at that slide, that project should have been completed in 2016. Tama ba yun? Does my recollection serve me right?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think 6 years, 5 years delay or something like that, Mr.
So
Chair.
finally, it's complete. My good friend is appreciative that it's complete, but my God, it's 5 years delayed.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If you, with your kind indulgence, Mr. Chair, when you have, we have a market kasi, no? That's what we call in sa WESM, and IMAP is the one handling that. So, may variation yan ng prices, and the prices are affected because of these delays. And that can be actually shown by IMAP. They have a presentation on how much is the effect of the delay, for example, for Mindanao, Hermosa San Jose, I think, and also of Panay Negros. They have that on file. They have calculations of how much is the impact on the price of electricity on the generation side because of the delay, Mr. Chair.
Kasi siyempre, alam mo, hindi naman tayo mauubusan ng dahilan para sabihin ng isang proyekto hindi matapos eh. Kaso lang ang problema ang dahilan, hindi nakakapagbigay ng solusyon yun sa problema ng tao eh. Ang dahilan is only a reason. What you're actually looking for is substantial results. And that's what the Filipino people should be holding on to, substantial results. So, now, on my point, I remember the time when I was a governor, Mr. Chair, and I would just like to end my interpolation. Alam nyo, meron akong dalawang niligawan na dayuhang kumpanya na magtayo ng kumpanya to So, hindi individual. Para pumasok. Diba? So, nagtayo na po sila ng kanilang infrastructures. They developed a large area in the province. And only to find out that they couldn't connect to the grid. And for years, they were hoping that NGCP would put up the facility so they could connect to the grid. It took so long a time, Mr. Chair. It took so long a time, mukhang magsasara na po yung kumpanya na yon. So ang ibig sabihin po dito, kung nais mo pumasok sa energy sector at hindi mahaba ang PC mo, malulugi ka talaga. Meron din pong nagnanais na magtayo ng renewable energy dun sa dulong bahagi ng aming probinsya. Solar power. Natatakot naman po sila mag-invest kasi wala pa po yung NGCP. So these are questions of development. Now, if NGCP can't improve the service that they provide, which is basic to every Filipino, Mr. Chair, it is only but right for us to review their franchise, to review their concession agreement. Because this is the only way for us to make sure that we're actually getting, the best service for every Filipino. Mr. Chair. So, with that being said, Mr. Chair, maraming salamat sa oras at panahon. Hihingin ko na lang po yung mga dokumento na hiningi ko, NGCP. At sana naman sa pagbisita po namin sa inyong facility. Nasaan po ba yung pinakamalapit yung facility?
Yung meron po sa Diliman, yun po yung sa Luzon.
Doon po kayo nagtatrabaho?
Kami po sa yung transmission planning, nasa Buona Venture po, sa may Green Hills.
Hindi, dito po sa main facility nyo, sino po nagtatrabaho doon?
Yung system operations po, ang nandun po sa Diliman.
Oo. Can I also request, Mr. Chair, a list of employees of NGCP?
Okay. Please submit the list of your employees.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
All employees. I
All
suppose.
employees, Mr.
All
Chair.
employees. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
The Honorable Sharon Garin, Yusek Garin.
Just, just to add to the query of
Yes, please.
Honorable Suarez. For example, the comparison of IMAP on the billings for the period before and after the completion of Mindanao-Visayas interconnection, ang difference nung January 2021 up to April 2023, sa Mindanao lang to na pricing, 6.17 pesos. Pero after, per kilowatt hour, pero after, nung na-complete siya, naging 4.87. There's a difference of 1 peso and 30 centavos after the completion. The same goes to the other projects, Mr. Chair.
So, in short, the delayed projects, for that example, you're looking at a 35% reduction, more or less, 35%, that they should have enjoyed 5 years before, if it was completed on time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Actually, IMAP has calculated the cumulative rin kung ano yung total na losses, na cumulative na reduction had it been completed already.
Yes. So that's the very reason why we're in this hearing, to figure out why and how do we solve it. The IMAP and Transcon, I know you have a presentation, but later on we will, either today or in the next hearing, you'll be given your time because the DOE presentation has a lot of questions that has to be answered by DOE. The next interpreter is the Honorable Ace Barbers. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most of the questions that I'd like to ask have already been asked by Deputy Speaker J.J. Suarez. But just following the issues that he raised on the very concerning and very alarming, there seems to be a control by the Chinese nationals in the operation of the NGCP. Kaya earlier, I was asking if the shareholders' agreement was submitted to the committee because most of my questions that I'd like to propound are based on the information that is stipulated in that agreement. However, in the absence of that, I'd like to pursue the issue where in this corporation, there seems to be total and full control of the Chinese nationals. Tanong ko lang sa NGCP, no? Sa maraming pagkakataon, kapag tinatanong who controls, operates, and manage the NGCP, ang lagi pong sagot ay Pilipino. Tama po ba yan?
Tama po, Your Honor.
Okay. So, pinaninindigan ninyo na ang merong management, control, and nag-ooperate ay Filipino.
Opo, Your Honor.
So, ang ibig sabihin po ba nito na ang Pilipino ay siya yung may desisyon, yung kumbaga huling pa siya doon sa mga decisions that the NGCP makes?
Opo, Your Honor.
Okay. So, Pilipino lahat yan.
Opo, Your Honor.
Okay, kasi kanina nabanggit ni Congressman Suarez na dun sa desisyon sa pagbili ng lupa, paghingi ng approval, ang nagre-rekomenda ay ang isang Chinese national. No? So that's the reason why I said earlier, this is very concerning and alarming. Bakit sila yung nagdidesisyon? di ba dapat Pilipino ang nagdidesisyon dyan? But sabi nga, gaya nga ng sinabi mo, Pilipino ito, no? Doon sa mga nakaraang hearing, lagi po natin ini-emphasize that Filipino control in the transmission network ng Pilipinas ay napakahalaga because marami pong isyong nakaakibat dito. At ang pinaka-importanting issue dito ay yung national security. Tama po ba? Do you agree with me?
I agree, Your Honor.
So you agree with this representation that full control, full management of the transmission, national transmission, must be in the hands of patriotic Filipinos.
Nag-agree po ako, Your Honor.
Nag-agree kayo dyan. Sige. So, matanong ko lang, ano ho ba sa inyong pananaw ang relasyon ng transmission network sa national security? If I may be educated, Mr. Chair. Sa inyong pananaw, sa NGCP, anong relasyon nito? Anong kahalagahan?
Napakahalaga po, Your Honor. Dahil katulad nga po sa mga nakakaraang House Committee on Energy hearing, si Kong Dagook talagang sinasabi niya parang basic necessity na natin ng power. Dati, food, tubig, bahay. Pero ngayon, power. Kaya po, sumasangayon ako na napakahalaga ng transmission network po.
So salamat at isa kang ring patriotic Filipino na sumasang-ayon na itong transmission network ng ating bansa ay dapat nasa ilalim ng kamay ng mga Pilipino. Sa present situation and setup ng NGCP, masasabi mo ba na ang transmission network ng Pilipinas under the control and management of NGCP ay nasa ilalim ng kamay ng mga Pilipino?
Walang pagsusubali, Your Honor. Sumasang-ayon ako na nasa kamay ng mga Filipino.
And I presume, Mr. Chair, that that's the same opinion shared by your colleagues in the NGCP. Tama po ba? Attorney, all of you from the NGCP.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, maraming salamat dahil napakahalaga nga po nitong transmission network natin, no? At isa doon sa function na kung saan ay bago gumawa ng project, bago bumili ng lupa, o anumang desisyon na gagawin ng management ng NGCP, meron po kayong kinreate o merong nakikreate na sinasabi niyong working group. Is that correct?
Your Honor, yun nga po yung hindi masyadong maliwanag sa akin. That's a matter that's not clear to me when si Congressman Luistro was the one asking question because working group, meron po kami mga TWGs. Kunyari, nung nag-bar exams, may TWG kami. Pag may election, may TWG na nag-aano na talagang hindi mag-brown out sa mga importanteng pagkakataon na yon. Hindi po ako pamilyar, Your Honor, sa working group. Hindi po ako pamilyar, Your Honor. We have, Your Honor, like departments, roadie right-of-way department. Meron po kaming mga ganon, Your Honor. Working group, wala po. Mula nang pumasok ako ng NGCP, TWG.
There's no such
working
thing
group,
as
hindi.
working group.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
There's no such thing as the working group. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, since I
Okay.
joined, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
hindi ako familiar sa
When did you join the NGCP?
2019, Your Honor.
But more or less you have reviewed or perhaps you have been informed as to the contracts entered into
Yes, Your
prior
Honor.
to your appointment, correct?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm
Halimbawa po,
with the
yung-
UGC, Your Honor.
Halimbawa po, yung 2014, yung nagkaroon ng bid para sa natitirang aspeto ng Aurora, Polanco, yung transmission line project, tama? You're familiar with that?
If your document provides so, Your Honor.
Yes, kasi nga napakahalaga because this is the information that was shared with us, wherein this working group plays a very vital and important role. Ba't ko nasabi ito, Mr. Chair, is that nung pong nagkaroon ng isang project, itong sinasabing Aurora Polanco 138 kV transmission line project, nagpabid ho kayo. But that is a normal procedure, correct?
Opo, competitive
And,
bidding before awarding any project.
Okay, so when you open for bids, do you qualify those that will submit their bids?
Yes, the bidders, Your Honor, are accredited, qualified. Yeah.
Okay, so I am also sure and certain that in this particular project which I mentioned, is that may nag-submit na mga bids sa inyo. And doon sa mga nag-submit ng bids, karamihan po ay Chinese-owned companies. Are you aware of that?
Pagpaumanhin po, Your Honor, I'm not aware dyan sa particular po na minimension nyo.
Or perhaps it may help us to determine whether these companies are really those that submitted their bids in this particular project. Can we ask the Secretariat to show the slide of these Chinese companies who joined the Aurora Polanco transmission line project? Tatlongput-anim po ang mga kumpanyang nag-submit ng kanilang bids dito. At lumalabas dito sa mga bid na ito ay mahigit kalahati ho ay puro China o Chinese-owned bidders o Chinese-owned companies. Now, bakit ko sinasabi to, no, na ano bang importansya, no? Okay lang naman ho siguro kung mag-bid ang isang Chinese company kung wala hong bidder mula sa Pilipinas. Do you agree?
Opo.
Okay. So, dun ho sa mga bids, sino ho nag-evaluate ng bids? Sino nagsasabing mananalo ito, matatalo ito, hindi nagka-qualify ito? Sino ho yan?
Meron po kaming department, Your Honor, at yung most advantageous bid, yun po yung mako-consider for an award, Mr. Chair.
Can you repeat that, please?
Meron po kaming department that who evaluates kung ang most advantageous bid, Your Honor, sa kanya po maa-award yung project, Your Honor.
Base sa aming kasing information, ang nag-evaluate o yung membro ng evaluation, bid evaluation, nag-submit ng bid evaluation report on this particular project ay si Mr. Yuan Mingjun at si Mr. Chen Changwei. You're familiar with those names?
I am not familiar with those names, Your Honor.
Yes, I agree because you were not there yet. No, this was 2014 project. So for those who were already there in 2014, you're familiar with these names.
Your Honor, I have been in NGCP since 2011 but I'm not familiar with those names.
So yung hindi ho totoo na meron pong nag-evaluate na by the name of Mr. Yuan Mingjun at Chen Chingwei.
Again, as I repeat, Your Honor, I'm not familiar of those names. But as mentioned by Attorney Malyari, we have a department which evaluates the bid submitted by different bidders and recommend the award with the most advantageous bid, Your Honor.
Based on the documents that we have, it seems that the approval, the evaluation of all these bids are done by these two Chinese nationals. Which again, I would like to raise this point that this is quite alarming and concerning. Kanina, sinabi natin yung pagbili ng lupa, Chinese ang ang nagdidesisyon. Yung pag-implement ng project, Chinese ang nagdidesisyon. So, again, can we ask the Secretariat to please flash on the screen
Which particular document do you want
The-
flashed?
I think yan yun. These
Thank
are
you
the
very much.
bidders, no? These are the bidders doon sa project which I specified, no? And in the next slide, it will show, can you show the next slide? So, majority po ng mga kumpanyang ito ay China-owned corporations. So, the next slide, please, Secretariat. Kanina ho kasi na-raise na po ito ni Congressman Suarez. And when he raised this issue of Chinese nationals being involved in the decision-making of the NGCP, did not just raise eyebrows, so to speak, but also, ito ay isang national security vulnerability sa tingin ko na yung mga importanteng desisyon ng NGCP ay nasa kamay ng mga dayuhan. So, yung next slide will show what I was mentioning earlier, yung sinasabing working group. No? Wherein itong si Mr. Yuan Mingjun at saka si Cheng Changwei, the chairman and the alternate chairman of the working group, no, are the ones deciding. So, ayan, yung name na Uyang, ayan, that's July 11, 2014, the so-called working group, the chairman of that is Yuan Mingjun, and the alternate chairman is Chen Changwei. So, as you said earlier, you're not familiar with this document, but perhaps ma'am, maybe you're familiar with this since you were there already in 2011.
Your Honor, I'm not familiar with this document.
So, you're not familiar with that. So, dalawang bagay lang ito. Yung research namin at yung base sa dokumentong sinasubmit nyo sa amin ay yun mga information that we'd like to be clarified on. That's why we ask these questions to you. Now, earlier, tinanong natin yung systems gaya ninyo kung ano yung procedure, no, para i-shut off, i-turn on or you turn it off yung buong power system. At sabi niya, ang in charge lang doon ay yung duty manager. If I remember it correctly, there's just one person or maybe two or three of them who are in control of the shutting down or the turning on of the system. To me, and I'm sure my colleagues will share my apprehension, na nakakatakot ito. Nakakatakot ito. And this is, again, something that we should really correct and we should look into, Mr. Chair. Now, other issues that were raised earlier by Kong Dan Fernandez were quite alarming too, no? Especially dun sa violation sa Section 8. But listening to the NGCP, definitely the first reaction is to deny, no, and to short of saying disagreeing with the observation of Congressman Dan Fernandez, and we respect that. It's just that we're all here para ayusin itong sistemang ito at hindi ito hindi mangyari yung kinakatakutan natin. na maaari at posibleng mangyari, considering that we have now an issue with China in the West Philippine Sea. I cannot imagine utility companies being managed and operated by, quote-unquote, the enemy. I'm sure you wouldn't want to sleep with your enemy. And majority ng ating mga kababayan na nakikinig ngayon ay nagtatanong, totoo ba na kapag halimbawa nagkaroon tayo ng alitan sa ating kapitbahay na China, isang pindot lang ba nila, mawawala na ang power sa atin? That needs to be answered. The Filipino people must be informed. They need to know kung ito ay posibleng mangyari. Pero sa sagot kanina, parang posible. Parang posible. Unless you have a better reply to that question, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, nandun ako sa likod nung kausap niyo si aming Mr. Clark Agustin. Yung scenario niyo po kasi na bigay sa kanya is si terorista na sa kwarto na. But ang ano po is, bago siguro nakarating si terorista doon, kasi po yung control center namin are physically secured. And insofar as yung mga tao na mag-on at mag-off ng mga equipment, there are switching procedures which includes validation between control and substation. So, sa hypothetical scenario, it appears na hypothetically it can be done, pero sa tunay na buhay, Mr. Chair, may kalabuan.
So, yan ay ginagarantiyan nyo sa ating mga kababayan.
Opo.
So, hindi pwede na pakialaman ng dayuhan ang control sa ating elektrisidad o power dito sa ating bansa.
Opo.
Sigurado kayo dyan?
Opo.
Okay, sige. I will not belabor that point anymore, Mr. Chair, but to give more time to my colleagues here that would like to propound questions, I am yielding the balance of my 38 seconds in my interpellation, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very much, the Honorable Ace Barbers. The Honorable Ernix Junicio is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. Sino po ulit yung mga representative natin sa NGCP? Parang tatlo po.
Meron po kaming
Pero yung nakaupo po, tatlo.
Tatlo po.
Ibig sabihin, kayo po yung nakaupo, kayo po yung may kaalaman. Mostly with regards to the query of the members of the committee. Tama po ba?
Opo. Hanggang sa kaya ng aming
Yes, ma'am.
abilidad.
Don't worry, ma'am. Ako naman. No, mahirap po kasi yung tanong ko eh. Ma'am, ano pong first nickname niyo, ma'am?
Pangalan ko po, Attorney Lali Malyari.
Attorney Lani, ma'am. Saan po ang probinsya niyo?
Batangas po.
Batanggenya po kayo.
Yes po.
Pilipino po kayo.
100%.
Okay, of course, it goes to, without saying. Of course, all the representatives from NGCP are all Filipinos here. Agreed?
Opo.
Opo. No, kasi actually, most of the queries and questions of the members have been asked by the members who asked questions earlier. Ako lang kasi na bagabag ng kaunti doon sa mga ibang informations, ma'am, na narinig ko, attorney. For example, ano ba yung nabanggit kanina, yung chairman ba? Sino po ulit ba yung chairman?
Based on the 2024 GIS ng NGCP po, the chairman is Mr. Zhu Guangzhou. Ang nationality niya po na naka-indicate dito sa GIS ay Chinese.
Ma'am, sinagot nyo na, tinatanong ko pa lang yun. But thank you, ma'am, for answering agad. Pero, bakit po kaya Chinese yung naging chairman, sa tingin nyo, ma'am?
Katulad po ng sagot ko kanina, Mr. Chair, how the Board of Directors operate, sila po yung nakakaalam. At saka po, pinasasubmit na rin po ni Congressman Suarez yung minutes of the meeting ng election.
Yes, ma'am. Opo. Kasi all the answers have been technical. I'm trying to talk to you as representatives of NGCP on a more, let's say, personal yung opinion po ninyo. Matagal na rin po kayo sa NGCP, 2019, tama po ba, ma'am?
2019, Mr. Chair.
Ma'am, kayo po, since when po kayo nasa NGCP?
Since 2011.
2011. So, more than a decade. Sir, kayo po,
2009 po.
2009. Mas antigo si Sir sa inyo. Pareho. No, yung ano lang kasi sa akin, hindi ba kayo... Ako kasi, ng first time I've heard dun sa sinabi na yung chairman natin, although yes, ipapass nyo sa committee yung mga minutes of the board, hindi ba kayo na babagabag na... O na sa sarili niyo pong opinion, I'm sure you are lawyers, na meron din kayong sariling opinion. Nababagabag po ba kayo o hindi naman po?
Mr. Chair, sa pagkakaalam ko po, insofar as our board of directors is composed and how they proceed with their order of business, ang chairman po ng board only presides. So, para pong nag-preside. So, kung bagabag dahil
Chinese.
Dahil meron siyang pwedeng ma-exercise na compulsion, kahit sa akin, sir, hindi po. Kasi it's outside. It's ultra-virus na po yung gagawin niya kung i-compel niya ako to do anything, Mr. Chair.
So, in your opinion, attorney, yung chairman, walang influence. Nagpe-preside lang siya. That is your opinion.
That's my opinion, and as they are constituted, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I understand that. That's the technical... Yeah. But the reality is, yung chairman, alam naman nating lahat, hindi lang naman hanggang sa preside. Yun naman ang realidad. Pero I won't stay with that. Ang nag-aalala lang ako si ma'am, yung mga narinig kong information, yung control over management, yung extent of influence in decision-making ng operations, medyo nakaka-worry. Yung State Grid International Development Limited, or SGID, tama po ba? Ito yung may 40% ownership, ma'am?
Opo, State Grid International Development Limited, Hong Kong, SAR. Buong pangalan po.
Sino po ba tong SGID na to, ma'am?
Katulad po ng nabanggit ko kanina, NGCP po kami. Technically, ito pong mga korporasyon na to ay separate from us. So ako po walang personal knowledge insofar as sinong nagko-compose kay State Grid International Development Limited.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I really hope that the committee, sana lumabas po lahat itong mga katanungan ng mga members at control over technical operations. Ma'am, ano po ba yung CTO, yung Chief Technical Officer? Ano po ba ang tungkulin nun?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Yung Chief Technical Officer po, under sa kanya yung 4 na grupo, yung System Operations, Planning and Engineering, Operation and Maintenance, and Technical Management Department.
Yung Chief Technical Officer natin, Pilipino naman po.
Tama po, Filipino po.
Ako lang, sa mga narinig ko po, to give way to my other colleagues, nakabagabag talaga yung mga narinig ko na, yung influence ng bansa ng China sa atin. So, Mr. Chair, that I really hope that the committee will find out to the bottom of things, the queries of each members, and sana itama natin yung dapat itama. Na yung mga bagay na dapat in control ang mga Pilipino, dapat fully controlled by Filipino citizens, patriots. Just one quick manifestation, Mr. Chair, na I'm in full support of the investigation of this committee. And in the end, wala naman pong magmamalasakit sa ating mga Pilipino, kundi tayo rin kapwa mga Pilipino. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Ernest Junicio of the City of Manila. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Rog. Yes, Honorable Rog, and then the Honorable Stella Kimbo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, before I begin my interpellation, I'd just like to have a short manifestation. Listening to the proceedings earlier, and of course we can't help but understand that some of our colleagues here have shared their elation and their gratitude to the NGCP for having connected their various constituencies to the grid. However, just to give it the proper context, because I, for one, this representation was one of the members of this committee who voted yes to the conducting of this motu proprio inquiry, I think we have to frame it in the proper context po, no? I don't think, not to sound ungrateful, but I don't think we should be happy when a franchisee is just doing its job po, no? And doing its job in a belated manner. I heard the statement earlier that better late than never. However, I think the Filipino people deserve better. We've talked about it. It was already mentioned earlier. In fact, we've heard the expert opinions that the 5-year delay actually caused an increase in price, which our constituents could have enjoyed earlier. Yes, we're thankful that eventually they were connected to the grid. However, there is a plan that has been afforded to them. And in fact, the ERC and the DOE have been bending themselves over backwards just to accommodate them po, no? And I think the problems and issues are very glaring. So if there's any question as to the direction of this inquiry, I, for one, would throw my support behind it. Because as the way that we've seen it, before we even started this inquiry, through the news articles and some of the privileged speeches of some of the congressmen, we've already heard some of the issues. Not to mention, we have these I'm not really sure it would be right thing to say, no? Perhaps it will be preempting po, no? Because a lot of these things are premised on documents which the NGCP have yet submitted to us. But there are allegations po, no? That their profits far exceed those that they are willing to spend to reinvest in our infrastructure. We're talking about the runaway cost in which they are passing it on towards us, the consumers. We also have issues of ownership, not only in questioning the nationalities involved and whether this respects the 60-40 rule that would be required of a public utility, but also of those that are in relation to the provisions of the franchise. Most glaring that we've been discussing today would be Section 8 po, no, in the dispersal of ownership. So in the face of all of these issues, I think it would not be wise to attack this issue with a sense of gratitude po, no. I don't think we should be thankful for the services that have been rendered when the rendered service was done poorly. And I think we should exact accountability, and that's what this inquiry is all about po, no. But with that said, Mr. Chair, I'd like to proceed now with my interpellation. And before I begin questioning NGCP, just most of the queries have been asked earlier, and a lot of my questions would actually hinge on documents that were already asked. But I believe just some few points on the dispersal of ownership. And I'd like to, before beginning with NGCP, I'd like to ask perhaps the ERC Chair, Di Malata, if I may, just to briefly summarize. I beg the indulgence of everyone here if these questions were already asked. We were going back and forth po kasi may session rin po kanina. But Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, from our understanding, I understand that you would be speaking on behalf of the ERC and that the ERC has already made rulings previously. Whether or not those were wise, we see as we go along with the line of questioning. However, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair of the ERC, yung ating dispersal of ownership, the basic concept of Section 8, what is the reasoning for this? I understand this would be under the wisdom of the previous Congress, but to give us to shed some light at least on the viewpoint of the executive, what is the reason for having a dispersal of ownership?
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I think the legislative intent, not just for the the RA 9511 for NGCP. But for franchises, that include, most of our franchises have include that obligation to disperse ownership. And the basic reasoning is that most of franchise holders are monopolies. So they have exclusive, in a way, exclusive rights to certain services, to certain geographical areas. So the intent is to allow the public to have some participation in that monopoly and to realize some gains also from the activities and the revenues of that monopoly, because it has no competition for that end. So that is in general the reasoning behind certain similar provisions. But as to this particular legislation, I think NGCP was asked about this, and I think it's wise if we check the deliberations of Congress at the time to get the specific requirement for this. But I don't think it will deviate significantly from the general principle behind the similar provisions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair, just wanted to double check lang po, no, because I would agree and tend to agree, because this is not the first time we've dealt with such provision under the Committee on Legislative Franchises, actually, and this is not limited only to when we're talking about yung distribution utilities or the like. Actually, even in the field of telecommunications, in the field of media, we also have this dispersal of ownership. And I just wanted to make sure that at least in the field of the DOE, it would be the same. Because the way that I see it, and I'm not sure if the committee shares this sentiment, but I believe that it's twofold po, no? One is that primarily it affords the public to participate and gain economic benefits, that is to benefit from the fruits of this monopoly, whether that be through dividends or whatever manner of which that could be compensated for their investment. But second and most important is a check and balance through ownership, through equity po, no? So the equity portion is very important. And would that be a fair statement, Madam Chair? I don't want to put answers in your mouth po, no? Would that be a fair statement that the dispersal of ownership also talks of equity and control of a corporation?
That's correct, Mr. Chair, because the public utilities, there is a requirement in the Constitution to observe certain Filipino ownership requirements. So that's also part of the parameters or safeguards that are put in the law.
So generally, Mr. Chair, when we are going to interpret these provisions of the franchise, it would be guided by those principles po, no? That generally, the interpretation of any provisions should be in support of public participation and economic gain that the public may get out of it, and then public participation and ownership, equity po, no? Thank you for clarifying that. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to now direct my questions to the NGCP. And I believe the current, not the spokesperson, po, the representative is... Mr. Chair, if I may yield to...
Mr. Chair, if you allow, can I show a picture of the structure of the ownership, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please, by all means.
It's with the Secretariat already.
Okay, Secretariat, please present the structure.
Yung isang picture lang. Because the objective was to disperse the ownership, ano. But with the structure, although ang caveat lang dito is we are still awaiting for documents from the corporations that are like holding corporations. In the structure kasi ng ownership nila, Mr. Chair, yes, the 40% is owned by State Grid. And then there's the 60%. Both 60%, if you divide it into half, that's Monte Oro, and the other half would be Calaca High Power Corporation. But if you go up, Mr. Chair, there's basically like on the 60%, medyo there are basically two people that are controlling NGCP, Mr. Chair. Wala, hindi mo pa. Ayan, Mr. Chair. It's too small, ano? We lifted this from the dissenting opinion in, this is a public document already. So pag inakyat mo siya, exactly what is the statement? Principally held by two persons lang siya, Mr. Chair. But yes, that is it depends on the submissions of NGCP on the ownership of the companies that are holding the shares, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Raj?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, if we may ask the COMSEC to keep that on screen, because coincidentally, I was going to be talking about that very opinion, because as a public record, I actually also ran into that dissenting opinion. And I would like to ask now the NGCP. Maybe ask Attorney Malyari po, no? So I understand that earlier, if you could, again, as I said, if you could bear with us po, no? We weren't here this whole time. We had other hearings, we were in session. Naitanong na po ito ni Chair Dan Fernandez po, no? You made mention of a share swap agreement, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, the share swap agreement has always been in the questions of Congressman Dan Fernandez, but not from me, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So, so I'll take the questioning from the start na lang po, no?
Okay,
So under Section 8, you have dispersal of ownership requirement po, no? And based on some of the filings that you've had with the ERC, I'm not sure if this was a case or whatever the main, whatever this was a dissenting opinion to, you were actually seeking for extension po for the compliance with Section 8. Is that correct, Attorney Malyari?
Up, Mr. Chair.
And the extension was made in reference to the requirement that you would have your shares directly offered to the public through an IPO, 20%. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Yun po, Mr. Chair.
And I believe that this was actually run down. I thought this was taken up by Congressman Dan Fernandez, because I heard Chair Dan going through the specific dates of which you had motion for reconsideration, etc., etc. So tama naman po, we were still talking about the IPO. But somewhere along the line, the NGCP opted to comply with Section 8, allegedly, through another mode. Is that correct, Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And that other mode would be what mode po kaya, Attorney Malyari?
The second mode provided under Section 8 of RA 9511.
And may we be enlightened as to what the alleged second mode would be?
I'll read, Mr. Chair. So, Section 8, dispersal of ownership under RA 9511, the grantee shall list the grantee shall list, subject to the requirements of the SEC and the PSE, and make public offering of the shares representing at least 20% of its outstanding capital stock or a higher percentage that may be hereafter be provided by law within 10 years from the commencement of its operations. Then there's the second, Mr. Chair, there's the second mode, provided that the listing in the PSE of any company which directly or indirectly owns or controls at least 30% of the outstanding shares of stock of the grantee shall be considered full compliance of this listing requirement.
And Mr. Chair, you are of the opinion that this was complied with by the NGCP?
Mr. Chair, yes, as confirmed in the ERC decision dated May.
So which would be the company po which directly or indirectly owns or controls at least 30% of them?
The one that was listed, Mr. Chair. Bali po, Synergy Grid, Mr. Chair.
Synergy Grid is the supposed company by which that you have complied with Section 8. And as to the ownership
route,
of
Mr. Chair.
Synergy Grid, are we not aware? No.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
But, Mr. Chair, I believe that the dissenting opinion that was flashed earlier, if we may ask the committee secretary to flash it once again, actually already divulged the owners. And I believe this is a public record. Was this not based on what the NGCP submitted to the ERC for their decision?
May I see, Mr. Chair?
ERC case number 2018-014 MC, is this not in relation to the extension or at least to the approval of your compliance with Section 8?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So what could be the basis of this figure 1, which is of public record?
If I have to hazard a guess, Mr. Chair, most likely the prospectus for which the follow-on offering of Synergy Grid and Development Philippines was offered, Mr. Chair.
So the prospectus by Synergy. So SGP, no? If you'd allow it, we'll just call it SGP for simplicity. So are you telling us now po that the NGCP would have no clue as to the IPO or whatever listing requirement was required out of SGP? That's what you're telling us now po. Kasi when I'm asking you questions about this organizational chart, you're telling us po wala po kayong kinalaman sa share swap agreement. Are you categorically denying knowledge of a share swap agreement?
Hindi po ako aware mismo. I haven't seen
Okay.
that share swap agreement. But perhaps there was a share swap agreement in order to come up with this corporate structure, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So perhaps. But this is a requirement under Section 8 of your franchise. Yet the NGCP has no knowledge of the proceedings in which SGP undertook to comply for NGCP's requirement?
Mr. Chair, when there was, personally, Mr. Chair, during the transaction of the follow-on offering, may mga dokumento po na pinapaprepare sa amin dahil ultimately yung ilalim kasi niyan si NGCP. Siya yung operating company, Mr. Chair, because sa taas mga holding companies. So may mga dokumento na pinapaprepare sa amin. So insofar as your question na wala ba ako, kunyari, personally, kaalam-alam doon sa follow-on offering, meron naman, Mr. Chair, but not the entire picture.
Okay.
Insofar as the documents that I am asked to prepare, Mr. Chair.
I hope you'd bear with us po. No? Can we have the chart flashed again po, please, Committee Secretariat? So, as far as we're looking at this, to what extent would you admit to having knowledge of po? To what level? Do you admit knowing that Monte Oro Grid Resource Corp owned 30% plus one share?
Apo.
To that extent that you could agree. Do you admit that State Grid International Development Limited owns 40% at the time?
Opo, kasi
Okay.
lahat po yan are
Direct.
even right now reflected in the 2024 GIS.
Also including Calaca High Power Corporation.
Yes, po.
Yes. Now, the second level, One Taipan Holding Inc., would you admit to having knowledge of its participation in direct ownership of National Grid Corporation of the Philippines?
Nakita ko na nga po, Mr. Chair, itong corporate structure na to when I was asked to work on some documents that are needed from NGCP. But yung in-depth, pasensyahan nyo na po, Mr. Chair.
That would be fine, Mr. Chair. I don't need in-depth naman po. No? I just wanted confirmation that this is not new to the NGCP. I understand that there are questions that you would answer that you don't have personal knowledge, but I hope you understand we invite you here as resource persons, assuming that there will be some kind of institutional knowledge po, no, of the things that we would be asking of you. So I understand that you would refuse to answer based on personal knowledge, but at least the admission that you have come across documents in which you are involved in this would be sufficient. So you agree, to what extent po you've seen this in the documentations that NGCP prepared for SGP when they're preparing the prospectus for their IPO? You've seen documents all the way to the top po, no? That Henry C. Jr. owns 49.93% of Synergy Grid and Development Philippines?
Wala po akong nakita na any ownership document insofar as that. Only, Mr. Chair, as the structure is shown. Yan lang, Mr. Chair.
Oh, so as the structure is shown.
Yes, Mr.
And these are documents that came from SGDP.
I would most likely,
Most
Mr.
likely
Chair.
po, no? Because they would prepare the prospectus and they
Yes,
would
Mr.
ask for
Chair.
your go ahead because this is concerning your obligations under the franchise po, no?
Mr.
So
Yes, Mr.
NGCP is aware of this structure. So we just are awaiting confirmation na lang po, no? Based on the ownership documents. So it's not new to the NGCP that we have the first layer of ownership, which is what is declared in the GIS. Then you have a second layer of ownership, which are holdings corporations, which are supposedly the means through which SGDP has indirect ownership of the National Grid Corp. However, SGDP's ownership of these two holdings is shared with private persons. And these private persons, namely Henry C. Jr. and Robert Coyuto Jr., each own, in the case of Pacifica, it's actually with Alameda Energy. So we'll have to look into that. But that's the structure by which SGDP exercises control and ownership for NGCP. However, Mr. Chair, at the time that this prospectus was prepared, and that they were already preparing for the supposed shift po, no? Because originally, it was supposed to be an IPO of NGCP itself. And then it shifted towards this supposed second mode. Was there any reason that the NGCP opted for this second mode? Any particular event or incident that caused them to suddenly change? Because I would imagine it would take a lot of preparation time. If you were given 10 years to prepare for the Section 8, I don't think you thought of Section 8 on the 10th year. So for over 10 years, you've been preparing for an IPO. Only at the last minute, after 2 extensions, I believe, you decide to opt for the, well, you won't admit it now, the share swap agreement, pero that's basically the method of which you have tried to comply with Section 8. So ano po kaya yung number one reason? Are you privy, perhaps, to the board meeting in which this was discussed?
Mr. Chair, I am not privy. But can I venture an opinion, Mr. Chair, based on my previous life? Because, Mr. Chair, previously I was in the Philippine Stock Exchange. And previously also I was involved in companies that do intend to list in the stock exchange. Mr. Chair, sa lahat talaga, every meeting doon, medyo hindi advisable ng isang operating company ang mag-list ng kanyang stock. Dahil po, Mr. Chair, dahil nga operating company, sobrang magalaw. Konting ano lang dyan, for instance, may blackout, may mag-halt trading po siya. So, that's my guess, Mr. Chair. But kung ano talaga yung nangyari dito, hindi po ako privy for the reason.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Madam. Thank you, Attorney Malyari. Mr. Chair, may I ask the chairperson of the ERC, would that be, in your opinion, a sufficient answer? Because I understand for an operating corporation, that would go for a lot of other corporations too. And at any time, we still have Section 8 and it's being complied directly by these franchise holders. So would that be a sufficient answer, Madam Chair?
Mr. Chair, maybe we'll just base it on our experience. For example, one of the longest listed utility is Meralco. Meralco is an operating company, one of the longest running private distribution utilities in the country. So that's one. We also have, I think it was mentioned earlier, telcos that are directly listed. PLDT, for example, is directly listed also. So I'm not sure about the basis, but I'm certain that NGCP had their own reasons for shifting. I just don't know, and I think Attorney Malyari also was saying she was not familiar with the reason of the board. I would think this decision is something that's made by the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair, and I agree, of course, NGCP has the reasons. But what we have to discover now is if those reasons are aligned with public interest. Now, if those reasons are to keep a control over who gets to participate in NGCP, then that would go against Section 8 po, no? And I think, of course, this is not something that they would be ready to answer now. But eventually, once the documents are made available, I think we will get to the bottom of it. But another telling aspect, siguro po, Mr. Chair, was the fact that the means by which they opted for this alleged second mode po, no? Yet, these shares are supposedly, maybe confirm, are these preferred shares or are they voting common shares? May we ask, Mr. Chair, Representative NGCP?
NGCP or Attorney Malyari?
Mr. Chair, sorry, no knowledge, Mr. Chair.
Would-
Sa buong sa buong proseso ng follow-on, hindi po ako familiar, Mr. Chair.
May I ask SEC the same question of the Honorable Rog Gutierrez? SEC. Can
Thank
you
you,
please repeat
NGCP.
your question?
Okay, I'll repeat it for the benefit of the SEC. Would the SEC have any knowledge po, no, as to what kind of shares were listed by SGP? What kind of shares are owned by SGP in NGCP po, no? Were there any common shares or are these all preferred non-voting shares?
I would just like to clarify SGP as in State Grid International Development.
Sorry, no. We're talking about because SGP owns shares of Monte Oro. Wait. Can we flash again for the chart now? Here. So supposedly, SGDP would have indirect ownership of NGCP through the holdings One Taipan Holding and Pacifica Holdings. And Pacifica Holdings, One Taipan Holdings would indirectly own NGCP through Monte Oro and Calaca High Power Corporation. Now, can we have confirmation po no, if the shares that are owned by SGDP in One Taipan and Pacifica, are they preferred shares or are they voting shares?
One Taipan. So we have to look at the GIS of One Taipan. I have here, wait, let me check. Based on our records, based on the GIS 2024 of One Taipan, Synergy Grid and Development Philippines Incorporated owns 86,430,000 common shares.
So they own common shares naman po.
Yes. Yes,
And
Mr. Chair.
for Pacifica 21 Holdings?
Oh, for Pacifica. For Pacifica 21 Holdings Inc., based on their 2024 GIS, it's the same, Mr. Chair. They also, Synergy Grid also holds common shares.
And we can presume naman po, no, kasi 100% ownership yung One Taipan in Monte Oro and Pacifica 21, these would be common shares naman po, no?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And for Monte Oro and Calaca, what is their percent ownership na common po sa NGCP? Do they own preferred shares in NGCP?
For NGCP, Monte Oro owns common shares. Also, what's the other one? Calaca High Power also owns common shares.
So all of the shares that they own are common
yes,
shares?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Based on our records, Mr. Chair, yes, common shares.
I request that those documents be furnished to the committee before you're leaving today.
Yes, we will furnish your
you.
body, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My follow-up question would be on the FOO, yung follow-on offering, but I understand the NGCP they would not be able to answer yung details ng FOO, tama po? So I think these are things that we'd have to ask na lang through documentation. So Mr. Chair, may we move? I don't know if this was already asked by Chair Dan earlier or any of our other colleagues, but maybe request siguro po from NGCP that they provide us documentation, first and foremost, on the share swap agreement, if that was not asked for earlier. Yung follow-on offering siguro po, we'll request that also. And Mr. Chair, if the body would be like-minded, siguro we have to invite representatives of SGTP mismo so that they can enlighten us as to this alleged second mode po, no?
Okay.
And
take note of that.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a short manifestation before I end. Given that we don't have documentation yet to answer, I still find it very hard to subscribe to the idea that this alleged second mode is a proper exercise po, no? Or the proper compliance with Section 8, because it seems to be very convoluted and it passes through a lot of hoops just to claim that there is an indirect ownership po of SGDP. Because the way that we see it, if it was really to comply with, let's say, assuming that for some reason, it's very hard for an operating corporation to directly offer 20% of their shares to the public. The most straightforward way that they could comply with the second mode was to have a holdings company that would own 30%. Why did SGDP have to split its ownership into two corporations, namely One Taipan Holdings and Pacifica Holdings, of which they share ownership with single persons, Henry C. and Mr. Robert Coyuto? So why would the question, I guess, Mr. Chair, is what's with the corporate gymnastics po, no? When it could have been a simple direct ownership of 30% which they offer to the public. Now, when you look at it in effect, without looking into the ownership documents that we're requesting, in effect, how much po talaga ang shareholdings ng public in NGCP. If this is to be believed, it says here other shareholders have only participated to the tune of 0.26%. Then whether or not they agreed, whether or not that second mode exists, the intent of the law is not being satisfied po, no? Because I don't think we could consider that in the twofold, the two factors that we were considering when we talk about Section 8. That is, enjoying the economic benefits of ownership. And second, yung exercising control through equity. So these are just some of the things that, although through the gymnastics, they might claim that legally they are complied, but in effect, it doesn't seem to be the case. And I think that's why we are here now convened as this committee to make sure that they are compliant with their franchise. I think just one more point that was mentioned kasi po earlier was that they're operating in the assumption that it was allowed by the ERC. That ERC basically gave the imprimatur the go-ahead with the second mode. But let's not forget, Mr. Chair, that based on Section 8, the only power that ERC has is to extend. They only have the power to extend that should it be found that it would be hard to comply with the 10 years 20% offering of the 10 years commencement. The requirement is not reached, the ERC may, upon application of the grantee and after notice and hearing, allow such reasonable extension of the period within which the grantee should list its shares of stock, if the market condition is not suitable for such listing. Nor does it say po, Mr. Chair, that the ERC will determine their compliance with Section 8. That falls on Congress under our constitutional mandate. So this is something for the committee to consider. And with that, I'd like to end my interpellation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Gutierrez of One Rider Party List. The Chair recognizes the Senior Vice Chair of the Committee on Appropriations, the Honorable Stella Kimbo of Second District of Marikina.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Medyo komplikado ang ating tinatalakay. Susubukan ko pong maging mas simple. Umpisahan ko na po sa NGCP na subcontractor ng ating gobyerno na siya po ang operator and taga-maintain ng highway na dinadaanan ng kuryente natin. Tama ba ang aking pag-describe ng NGCP USEC Sharon?
Mr. Chair, yes, sir. As a transmission network provider, yun yung infrastructure, and then systems operator, yun yung parang conductor siya.
Yes, tama. At ang highway na yan ay pagmamayari ng ating gobyerno through Transco.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes. At ang NGCP ay subcontractor. In other words, meron siyang kontrata with our government. At ang tawag sa kontrata na yan ay concessionaire agreement. Kaya ang NGCP ay isang concessionaire.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
At nagbabayad ng concession fee sa gobyerno.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. At bilang concessionaire, ang NGCP ay public utility. Tama ba yun?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. At sa ilalim ng Public Service Act as amended, alam kong alam na alam mo to, Yusek Sharon, dahil ikaw ang nag-defend ng batas na to. Ang NGCP ay natural monopoly. Tama ba yun?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
At dahil siya ay natural monopoly, ano ang implication nito pagdating sa cost efficiency? Ibig sabihin, meron ba tong implication sa presyo ng kuryente?
Well, the monopoly by nature kasi, if you have more than one, it becomes an expensive utility. That is, and so a monopoly makes sense in this. Actually, it's practically the only monopoly in the country, no? Kasi sa grid Wala ka namang ibang utility that it's nationwide monopoly. But as a safeguard, we have ERC to regulate it, Madam Chair.
So, Mr. Chair, usually, pag sinasabing monopoly, mahal dapat. Di ba? Yun ang iniisip natin. Kaya lang, sa ilalim ng batas, pag natural monopoly siya, and in this case, nakakategorize siya as a natural monopoly, exception siya kasi by its nature, dahil sa kanyang technology, dapat nagiging more cost-efficient siya. Parang ganon. Tama ba yun?
Yes, Madam Chair.
So inaasahan natin na dapat mag-operate siya in a way na mapapababa dapat niya ang presyo ng kuryente. Tama ba yun?
Correct, Mr. Chair, because if we have two transmission companies and rely on competition to lower the cost, hindi yan effective in this sense because of the nature of the business. Dalawang infrastructure gagastusan mo, then that won't make sense. So that is the purpose of EPIRA and also the franchise law. Now, by having one, it will redound to cost efficiency and lower prices for the consumers.
So yun ay in theory. Okay, so pabalik ako sa'yo. So right now, naniniwala ka ba na ang charge ngayon ng NGCP, meaning yung wheeling charges, tama ba yun? Yun ba, magkano ba ngayon ang wheeling charges ng NGCP per kilowatt hour?
Madam Chair, I submit to the opinion of the
Pwede ba
statement
namin
of
malaman?
ERC kasi sila yung nag-regulate ng prices, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair pala.
Mr. Chair, based on NGCP's own representations dun po sa billing, consumer bill updates nila, for November 2024, for example, the wheeling charges, which we call Power Delivery Service, PDS, in Luzon is 46 centavos per kilowatt hour. In Visayas, it's 36 centavos per kilowatt hour. In Mindanao, 47. On the average in the Philippines, 45 centavos per kilowatt hour.
How does this compare to other countries?
Ay, naku.
So bilang isang regulator,
Apo.
so tama ba na ayon sa concessionaire agreement, ang nakadesignate na regulator ay ang ERC? Tama ba?
Tama po, at ayon din po sa EPIRA. Apo.
Anong role ng DOE?
DOE is the policy side. So if there are any infractions on even in the policy or in the franchise, then they go to ERC for whatever penalty or impositions. We just issue the policies.
So pagdating sa PSA, kapag may violations, yung administrative agency sa ilalim ng PSA, yan ang ERC?
Yes, for the regulation, yes.
Okay. So dapat, alam ng ERC kung ano ang global comparison. So kung about 46 centavos per kilowatt hour dito, magkano siya halimbawa sa Vietnam?
Madam, Mr. Chair, hindi po, siguro po we can do a survey, may data naman po, pero hindi po madaling mag-compare kasi po in other jurisdictions like Vietnam, as you cited, they are still what we call vertically integrated utility. So yung kakumpara lang po natin in our region, Southeast Asia, would likely be Singapore. Pero we would also caution against comparison.
Kasi masyado maliit.
Masyado pong maliit, tsaka GOCCs din naman po yung ibang
So
players
subsidized.
po nila. Opo.
So wala kang sense kung mura ba siya o mahal?
Not in the global comparison
Paano,
sense.
anong basihan mo? Di ba, natural monopoly siya. So, paano mo malalaman kung pinaperform niya ang kanyang mandato? Di ba?
Opo. Meron po tayong under the regulatory framework that governs NGCP, meron po tayong tinatawag na building blocks for its reset. Included po doon, yung global comparison po doon, papasok doon sa WACC, for example, because basket of elements po yung magko-compose ng WACC, which includes some global risk component also. Pero maliit lang po yun. Yung other po are performance parameters that the ERC would set. But we also have consultants, na alala ko lang po, na that are also exposed to other jurisdictions.
Okay,
Maybe
so,
they can
long and
provide.
short, ano ang assessment ninyo pagdating sa wheeling charges ng NGCP?
Right now, Mr. Chair, because we are finalizing our reset, I think it has been disclosed and it's public knowledge already that there has been no reset of the NGCP rates since 2011. So, and based on our review, for example, just the WAC component, that should have been adjusted, lowered over
So,
the last
mataas.
few years. So mataas po siya talaga pag dun po natin binase.
Kasi meron akong nakita, well, Google search lang naman, ang nakita ko is sa Vietnam, 0.19 per kilowatt hour. So, pag
Pero
kinonvert
yun nga po,
in
it's
pesos.
government controlled po kasi yung...
Well, yun na nga. So, ba't sinasabi ko nga, well, again, kaya kung gustong tanungin sa inyo, pero, well, unang tingin, ang laki ng difference. So, pwede bang, in the next hearing, ay bigyan nyo kami ng global comparison?
We will submit, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so itutuloy ko na yung tanong ko relating to the refund. So earlier, nasabi po ninyo na 21 billion yung, should I say, charges na hindi dapat. Tama naman yon, di ba? Is that accurate? From
On the-
2016 to 2022.
That's the franchise tax.
Ito po
Mr.
yung
Chair.
3%
Opo, tama po.
franchise tax na pinasa sa consumers na sa tingin ninyo hindi dapat.
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so anong status nun? May pag-asa po ba na i-refund yan?
Yan, based on the hearing in the other committee, Mr. Chair, we've commenced the review, revisiting of that possibility to refund. We hope to complete it within the month para po makapag-report po kami sa committee ulit ng action ng komisyon.
So earlier, tinanong kita, Chair, kung bakit hindi nyo po alam kung magkano dapat yung from 2011 to 2015.
Mr. Chair, just to correct, yung 2011 to 2015, meron pong finalized na third regulatory reset doon. So, okay lang, yung pong 2016 onwards, yun po yung fina-finalize pa lang
Hindi
po
ba it's just a matter of determining kung magkano ba yung binayad nila na hindi ba ganon ka-straightforward kung ano yung 3% franchise tax?
You're just talking about the franchise tax,
Yes,
Mr.
di ba?
Chair.
Yun yung 21
yes,
billion,
yes.
right?
Opo. Meron naman, yun pong franchise tax, madali pong makompute, pero wala po kaming data from
Hindi ba it's as simple
2011.
as if I ask you, magkano yung franchise taxes from the time that they operated up to 2022? Magkano po yun?
We can compute it based on what on the AFS, for example, the numbers in the AFS. But, Mr.
Yes.
Chair,
Hindi
what
ba yun? Hindi ba ganun ka-straightforward yun?
Kasi po we wanted to vet it against the payments that they actually made to BIR. Yun po sana yung ano. But we don't have copies of the returns, of their tax
Iba
returns.
po ba yun i-report sa...
Pwede pong iba. Opo. Pwede pong iba.
Hindi, but more or less, hindi naman may iba yun ang malaki, di ba? But so based on the financial statement, and this could be just a tentative number, based on the financial, audited financial
we can
statements.
compute, Mr. Chair, based on the AFS.
But I have it. Based on the audited financial statements. Can you confirm that it's about 18 billion? Sorry, would you have it with you? Yung total franchise taxes?
I will have it checked, Mr. Chair. Okay. Mr. Chair, just rough calculation from our end, from 2011 to November 2023, that would average, no, even 2022 po, i-cut off natin, that would average about 1.3 million pesos annually. So,
Million?
Billion po. Sorry.
1.3 billion annually. Pero paano naging 21 billion yung 2016 to 2022?
Checking now, Mr.
So I was just wondering, because based on the financial statements, yung one, I also got the same number, 1.3 thereabouts, so about 18 billion, which is very different from yung sinabi po ninyo kanina na 21 billion for the period covering 2016 to 2022. So malaki po yung disparity.
Opo, mga 3B. I'm trying to...
Yes, it's about 3.5
Opo.
billion per year
Yes.
for the period 2016 to 2022.
Trying to reconcile that, Mr. Chair. Because
But of course, mas
from
gusto
the
namin yung
total-
3.5.
Apo. Checking po kung how we reconcile. But from the initial numbers based on average, mga 18 nga po.
Sige po, but when you come back sa next hearing, so can you just give us a more, yes, and for the entire period?
Yes, yes, we will do that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. My next question is, bakit po, dun sa nung tinignan po namin ang financial statements, why is there a line for other taxes? Hindi po ba maliwanag naman po sa franchise agreement na nagbabayad lang dapat ang NGCP ng 3% franchise tax in lieu of all other taxes? So bakit po may about
Mr. Chair,
bakit may fees of about 7 billion?
Mr. Chair, there are instances based on our review, but maybe NGCP can provide more details. But based on our review in the reset that we conducted, there were some LGUs that were imposing RPT, real property taxes and local taxes on NGCP. NGCP would pay under protest, but there were collections made. So NGCP would reflect it in their AFS. But from our reset, it's unanimous naman po yung commission dito. We did not allow it. We did not allow it to be passed on to the consumers
But
because
that was only beginning 2023.
yun pong reset namin 2016 po, yung kinocover
So prior
namin.
to that, may determination na po ba kayo that that was passed on to the consumers?
We'll check for the past period, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, in other words, can they please make a more comprehensive assessment with respect to this provision? So, hindi lang po sa franchise tax, kundi dun sa all other taxes na posible pong, and fees, kasi itong provision na to, I believe, refers to not only taxes, but all other fees. Hindi po ba? So, lahat po ng pinasa ng NGCP sa consumer na hindi dapat pinasa sa consumer, kung pwede po sanang matignan at kung paano natin ma-refund sa consumer, not necessarily in a form of rebate, but in a form of, rate adjustments moving forward.
We will do that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, salamat. Next ko po na tanong, ay, nasan po ang representative natin mula sa BIR? Sir, kayo naman, sir, nandyan pala kayo.
Sorry, Your Honor.
Nakikinig naman kayo sa discussion, no?
Yes, Your Honor. Lumabas lang, Your Honor, for restroom, Your Honor.
So first question is, bakit malaki yung difference between yung reported na taxes dun sa financial statements versus actual collections ng BIR? Could you kindly just work na lang with the ERC to do the reconciliation?
Yes, Your Honor. It's already been discussed inside of the Bureau to reconcile or look into this matter, Your Honor. And I will raise this. I will raise the request to work with the ERC, Your Honor, with our principals, Your Honor.
All right. Okay,
Thank you,
salamat. Okay. So my next question, Mr. Chair, is with respect to Section 7, this is on cross-ownership. So kanina po, pinag-usapan natin, actually, I wanted to show the ownership structure, pero diniscuss naman very comprehensively ni Kong Rog. But so I'd like to take off from there. Perhaps we should just ask Commissioner Maceda, because that is from your dissenting opinion. So, ay hindi mo verify ng NGCP ng ating mga nila attorney nila ma'am. Hindi nyo ma-verify, right? Yung the first two lines. Tama po ba? The last two lines, sabi ninyo, yes. But the first two lines, you cannot verify.
No, not familiar, Your Honor.
But you know what, curiously, it's actually listed, if you just do a simple Google search, and just Google search Henry C. Jr., it says he's the chairman of the board of Synergy. So, hindi kayo familiar?
What is the query, Your Honor? Whether or not we are familiar with the entire structure and how it works?
Meaning the information that is listed in the first two lines.
Hindi po, Your Honor. Katulad nga po na nasabi ko sa kanina, familiar po kami NGCP. Pag nga umahon na sa magulang namin, which is Calaca, Monteoro, and State Grid, hindi na po kami masyadong familiar sa sa corporate structure ng mga yon.
Okay, but anyway, you'll be submitting documents, right?
Yes, Your Honor, and I think there's also a subpoena in that regard, Mr. Chair, to be given to the address that's reflected dun sa GIS po.
Okay. So I'd like to return, Mr. Chair, to Commissioner Maceda. So ma'am, I'd like to ask your opinion if you believe that there is a violation of Section 7 of the franchise agreement on cross-ownership. Particularly the second paragraph, the grantee or any of its stockholders, directors, or officers thereof, or any of their relatives within the fourth civil degree of consanguinity and their respective spouses shall not be allowed to hold any shares of stock in any power industry player as defined in this act, etc. So in other words, kung meron po na pangalan na listed po doon sa ownership structure, if we can pull up the slide na pinakita po kanina, kung meron po sa inyong, nung sinusulat po ninyo ang inyong opinion at ginawa po ninyo yung chart na yan, may napansin po ba kayo na posibleng paglabag po ng cross-ownership provision?
Mr. Chair, Honorable Congresswoman Kimbo, my dissenting opinion principally focused on this structure. In fact, if you look at this structure, you'd find this in the order of the Commission itself. This is the May 26, 2022 order. So, earlier on, there were questions as to the source of this document. This was actually a compliance by NGCP. NGCP submitted this to ERC, and it's in page 171 of the prospectus. So, with respect to the cross-ownership, my dissenting opinion did not go into that because I'm limited based on the information made available to us. But with respect to this structure, what I raised in my dissenting opinion is the fact that these corporations have interlocking directors. And if we're talking about public dispersal of shares in a public utility, the intention is to widen the reach of that dispersal. But if you have, for example, and as stated by our SEC representative earlier, when we talk about a share swap, based at least on her opinion right now, there is actually no public offering, but rather a transaction between two corporations or more. And this is exactly what happened here. But to my mind, what is more compelling in terms of concern is the fact that there are interlocking officers or owners in these companies. And to my mind, if you have such a reality, are you able now to meet the economic or share dispersal provision in the Constitution as well as in the Section 8 of 9511, RA 9511?
I should just ask either Chair Mona or Yusek Sharon. So, balikan natin ang cross-ownership provision. Ano bang ibig sabihin noon? Yusek Sharon. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I may respond, I think this is referring to Section 45 of EPIRA, which prohibits the ownership of shares of stock of NGCP, of the transmission operator, directly or indirectly within the fourth civil degree of affinity or consanguinity. So this is under Section 45 of EPIRA. But under...
So in other words, if any of the shareholders of NGCP would be related to
the fourth
any
degree,
shareholder of any other player
Generation,
in generation
distribution.
or distribution. So kunwari, may power plant, hindi siya dapat related
Apo.
doon.
Absolute po yun, under EPIRA. But under the franchise of NGCP, RA 9511, I'm just looking for the provision, Mr. Chair. Section 7, thank you po. Section 7 of RA 9511, the word indirectly is no longer, the phrase directly or indirectly was no longer present. So in effect, it refers to direct share. The prohibition is only on direct shares, and therefore indirect shares, there can be an interpretation that indirect shares can be allowed. Plus, there is an exception that's provided now in 9511.
So that is your interpretation.
It will look like it, Mr. Chair, especially if the proviso is read that the cross-ownership prohibition shall not apply to a relative.
So you are looking at EPIRA. I am...
No, this one po franchise.
So the
Section-
franchise, under the franchise,
Section 7 po of the franchise,
okay,
naglagay na po siya ng exception. Sa EPIRA po, absolute. Sa franchise po, may mga exceptions po siya.
so which proviso allows?
The proviso in Section 7 says that the prohibition does not apply to any stockholder if such relative is any stockholder, director, officer of the grantee, if there is no employment, consultancy, fiduciary, and so on. Plus, if the share ownership is not more than 1% of the total outstanding shares, then that can be part of that's no longer covered by the prohibition. So naglagay na po ng mga exceptions in that absolute prohibition in EPIRA.
So for example, if 1% ka lang sa NGCP, okay lang.
1% po dun sa 1% po dun sa industry player. So may shares ka sa NGCP, tapos meron kang up to 1% in a listed industry player, allowed.
Then you're
po
allowed.
yun. Apo.
So,
Plus,
but
plus there are other exceptions.
okay, so but my question is, have you, because there are possible, right? Just looking at the names, tama ba ako?
Well,
I mean, there are obvious possibilities, right? So have you looked into those?
not yet, Mr. Chair. Compliance with this.
Yes, so yun ang tanong ko. Kasi kayo po ang regulator, tama ba ako? maliwanag sa concessionaire agreement, kayo po ang regulator, kayo din po ang administrative agency sa ilalim ng PSA as amended. So kayo ang titingin ng mga paglabag. Tama?
po. Tama po.
So, kaya po kayo tinatanong.
Yes. Wala pa pong ganong analysis, Mr. Chair, but definitely that is part of
Sige
what
po,
we
so
should
sa susunod
review.
po na hearing, kung pwede po, yan na lang po ibaon ninyo na information. Yan po ang isasubmit po ninyo na dagdag na report.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. Other than the specifics of the provision, Mr. Chair, I think behind this, the spirit of the provision is to disperse ownership, in order to avoid parang mga anti-competitive behavior. And if you have that structure, this is, I'd like to remind lang the body na yung structure na to before pa to ng swapping, ng kung ano man arrangements nila. So ngayong today, there should be a different structure already, especially on the third level ba yun? Or the upper level, no? So ang objective is, there are two limitations. There's a limitation on the cross-ownership side na dapat you don't engage if you're affiliated already. And then the other one is the public offering, Mr. Chair. And seeing the structure, it's a very dangerous situation kasi it's a monopoly. And it can dictate so many moving parts in the energy industry. So I don't know if the objective is with all this, anong tawag ni Congressman, the corporate gymnastics that they have done. I don't know if it supports the spirit of this provision, Madam Chair.
I hope that would be included in your report. Mr. Chair, can we now look into the financials of NGCP? So you started operating
Proceed.
in 2009. From then up to 2023, your total cash dividends is about 242 billion. Is that correct? 242.8 billion. NGCP, anyone who has the financial statements? Or let's start with revenues. Total revenues, 702.5 billion from the time you operated in 2009 up to 2023.
Your Honor, may we know whether the figures are being that you were
From the audited financial
from
statements.
the AFS?
Yes.
And the date of that
From
AFS?
2009, 39.5 billion, 2010, 43.8 billion, 2011, 45.6 billion, 2012, 44.5 billion, 2013, 44.5, 2014, 45.19, 2015, 45.7, 2016, 45.3, 2017, 45.4, 2018, 45.4, 2019, 45.3, 2020, 48.6, 2021, 48.6, 2022, 61.8, 2023, 53.
Your Honor, thank you for that enumeration. Right now, Your Honor, we do not have a copy with us of the AFS, but
More or less, what do you know? What number do you know, total revenues? Last year, for example, 2023 full year, would you know that?
I do not have information, Mr. Chair.
Does anybody?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair. The audited financial statements are submitted regularly to Transco, and maybe Transco can
Transco?
report to you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we please ask Transco?
Those recognized.
If they can provide us with the financials of NGCP.
Can you give us a few 1 minute? We just
Revenues, net
get the
income, dividends.
For the dividends given by NGCP
Mr. Chair, let's start na lang with revenues, sir.
with the
Pwede ba natin umpisahan sa revenues?
for the gross revenue starting 2009.
Meron po ba kayong kahit aggregate na lang?
Aggregate po is
From the time they-
704 billion point 29. Net income is 330.17 billion. And cash dividend is 242.839 billion.
Okay, salamat po. So, Commissioner Masada, just to return to you quickly, earlier, nung pinakita po natin ang ownership structure, parang ang naging conclusion ninyo dun sa diagram na yon, tama ba ako na sinabi ninyo, essentially, dalawa lang talaga ang individuals ang may-ari ng NGCP. In a gist, tama ba yon?
Well, plus China po, the state grid of China. So if you look at the structure, I think we need to look at the detailed structure of these participating entities. Tatlong levels po kasi yan eh. But if you look at the two major shareholders there, Henry C. Cuyuto, you look at Monte Oro, Pacifica, and you look at the share swap with Synergy, makita nyo po na may interlocking owners no, or shareholders. So, sila lang ba yung players dito? Definitely hindi po. May mga iba pa namang shares na hindi accounted for nitong dalawang major shareholders ng NGCP. But
Pero
what's...
in a major way, ang sinasabi po nyo, pretty much, itong 242 billion, in a big way, ay napunta sa dalawang major shareholders.
Yes, yes. Plus state grid of China.
Plus yung Chinese
Opo.
group. So
Opo.
yun yung tatlong entities, yung dalawang individuals and the Chinese group.
Yes, Chair.
So yung 242 billion na yun, napunta doon sa tatlong entities na yun, dalawang Filipino individuals at yung Chinese group.
Yes, Chair. Being the principal shareholders.
So yun ang ibig natin sabihin na may problema tayo na hindi dispersed ang ownership.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Salamat po. So, yun ang bottom line, di ba, Mr. Chair. Wait. Last na lang po, Mr. Chair.
You have the floor. You waited for 4 hours.
I know. Kaya nalilito na ako sa dami ng nilista ko po. Actually, Mr. Chair, parang kanina ko pa pinapakinggan ang DOE, ERC, pinapanood ko po ang dynamics. Nakakapagtaka kasi sila naman ang regulator, hindi po ba? So, actually yun ang sa akin ang, pasensya na po so yun ang aking big question mark. Parang, kung kayo ang regulator, at alam na alam po ninyo na ito ang mga delays in all of these projects, at na-frustrate po kayo. Kasi alam na alam po ninyo, halimbawa ni Yusek Sharon, nabilib po ako na pagdating doon sa golf course sa Cebu, ay ang kailangan lang pala palitan ng location ng mga holes doon sa golf course. Ibig sabihin, alam na alam nila mga problema. Pero gayon pa man, parang hirap sila na to put a handle on the problems. So yun ang tanong ko, pero maliwanag na maliwanag sa concessionaire agreement na kayo ang regulator, di ba? And more importantly, babalik tayo sa Constitution. Parang sa akin, simple lang kasi Article 12, Section 2, may babasahin lang po ako na one sentence. The exploration, development, and utilization of natural resources shall be under the full control and supervision of the state. Parang, dun pa lang, parang ang laki na ng problema natin. Kasi kanina, ang dami pong lumabas na mga documents na klarong-klaro na ang control ng mga very sensitive na processes ay wala po sa kamay ng Pilipino. So yun ang mga tanong, bakit nangyayari ito? Bakit natin pinapayagan? Bakit ang ating regulator ay hinahayaan na mangyari ang mga ganito? Eh, klaro naman po sa ating Constitution. Tapos ang ating NGCP, ang palusot is, nangyari yan noong 2014. 10 years ago, hindi ko alam ang document na yan. Wala na yung tao na yan, si Mr. Wanbo. Eh, hindi yun kasi maliwanag sa Constitution na dapat may full control and supervision ang Estado. So, yun ang malaking tanong. So, siguro, ARC lang ang pwedeng sumagot. Ma'am, Chair muna.
Chair muna.
Mr. Chair, and
You
then
can,
I think
that was,
Yusek Sharon also
no, I think,
wants to make-
Chair muna, this is a issue of regulation, and you're the sole agency for this.
Yes.
Please
Mr. Chair,
answer the question.
We really have that obligation, and
Please,
I'm sorry. We cannot deny that that obligation rests on us, on the ERC. And that's why when I think 3 months into the job in 2022, that's among the first things that I did as the new chair was really to commence the reset of NGCP. And since then to this day, we have for the first time penalized also the delays of NGCP for those 34 projects. For the first time also enforced the show cause orders on NGCP for their failure to comply with DOE directives since December 2019. So I think on the enforcement side, we are doing our share. We're doing a lot of catch up, but definitely since 2022 to this day, it's very challenging to catch up for more than a decade of I don't know, delays in projects, issues on enforcement. But for this time around, we are committed to really do our part, to really do our role as you have put it, as the sole regulator of the transmission concessionaire. But Mr. Chair, I cannot answer for the past. I can only commit and comment on what we are doing today and what we have been doing since 2022, since August 2022.
Pero, Chair,
Yes,
nagulat po
Honorable
ako
Kimbo.
na yung kahit na yung simpleng cross-ownership, pasensya na po ha, I mean, these are basic, di ba? Cross-ownership, ownership, control. Eh, yun lang naman ang basic elements ng ating franchise agreement. Hindi po ba dapat naman po maging compliant naman po kayo kasi may reportorial requirement sa Kongreso taon-taon. Hindi po ba dapat seryosohin naman po ang nire-report sa Kongreso? So, yun lang po. So, sana naman sa pagbalik po ninyo ay sana magkaroon kayo ng mas masusing report po sa amin bilang regulator po. And huli na lang po.
Sir Chair.
Yes.
With your indulgence,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, on the
Yusek,
question.
Garin.
I totally agree with the question because your first question when you interpolated was like who is NGCP? It's actually a subcontractor of the government, and it should be under the control and direction of the government, thereby with DOE and ERC as a regulator. If historically there has been, we've researched this actually, what happened in the past and all the communications. For example, Mr. Chair, we have issued policies on the audit or the evaluation of creating an audit committee of the performance of NGCP, and NGCP has objected to our authority in issuing the policies. In fact, we in place when Secretary Lutilla took office. Yeah, I can't remember the exact name. The evaluation committee, performance assessment committee, in which NGCP should be part of it, and it's still not moving because they're not willing to participate because they have so many objections on, and you have three things that are the basis of this, which is the concession agreement, the franchise, and the EPIRA. Now, if you go to the franchise, that's for Congress to determine. And the franchise actually just puts the regulatory on ERC. And that's one of the reasons in the communications of NGCP that we do not have the authority to check on their performance. And on the other hand, if we go to the concession agreement, then they will go to that will prolong the agony because they will bring us to arbitration, in which they already have an arbitration case that has been going on for, I think, decades already. So DOE and ERC are tied with these limitations. Kahit nga if you remember the penalty that was imposed by ERC on the delayed projects is about 15.8 million. That is very minimal, Mr. Chair. So there are provisions in the law that limits the authority also of the DOE and ERC. Of course, that does not eradicate the fact that there are lapses also. We have been trying. In fact, we have proposed that the issuance of an executive order in which projects that are NGCP is unable to deliver on time should be a government or a third party can be allowed to construct it and then go through. Turn it over to NGCP, and cost recovery will be regulated by ERC. That has been objected to also by NGCP. So
invoking the exclusive financing,
the exclusivity of the franchise. So we are tied with all these legal matters but we have appealed and we have that it is for the sake.
Which, Mr. Chair, by the way, hindi naman exclusive financing because marami naman na power plants na nagfa-finance ng sarili nilang connection to the grid. Tama ba ako?
Okay, correct.
Oh, so in which case, kung pinapayagan nila yon, parte naman yun ng transmission. Tama ba ako?
Our opinion is it becomes part of the transmission.
It is,
once
right?
It is,
because that's already transmission. So kung pinapayagan nila yon, dapat nilang payagan din yung sinasabi po ni Yusek Sharon.
There's objection to that in institutionalizing the concept. Once you institutionalize, it will be regulated and the agreements will be, approved and transparent. And that I'm not sure what the reason is in objecting to that concept. But that is the idea that DOE and along with DRC wanted to pursue, no? Na we would know the standards. Why are some projects acceptable and why are some not? So we've tried various mechanisms, but yes, there are limitations, and we don't want
negotiated. can the CA be renegotiated? The concessionaire agreement?
I think that PISAM would be in the position to answer that. It is an agreement between
Can you
Transco,
also
PISAM.
like ask legal of PISAM and submit to us a position paper?
It can be, I think, a renegotiation would be among the parties as private parties, let's say. But once there is an objection on any terms of the contract, you have to go for arbitration in Singapore.
Costly. Last promise, last question. Obviously, at a certain point, Mr. Chair, matatapos din ang franchise agreement ng NGCP either peacefully or non-peacefully. Tanong kay Yusek Sharon, pasensya na ha, necessarily ba kailangan maging monopoly ang transmission of electricity? Ibig sabihin, kailangan ba isa lang ang concessionaire? Kasi talaga naman isa lang ang highway, di ba? Isa lang naman talaga ang grid. Pero hindi pa pwedeng Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, separate concessionaires? Pwede ba yon? Di ba technologically possible ba yon? Posible, di ba?
Yes.
Kasi sabi ni Sir kanina, 3 buttons. Oh, why can't we have 3 separate concessionaire agreements so that you can benchmark performance? In the same way that we have 2 water agreements, in which case nakakapag-benchmark tayo ng performance. Hindi ba pwede yon? Hindi naman necessarily dapat natural monopoly yan, di ba?
Mr. Chair, you can even go further, no? You can divide it by the 3 regions, and in fact, it more or less exists because we have off-grid and on-grid, no? So may mga
That was
grid
actually the point of my question
grid operators.
earlier, kung bakit ba natural monopoly yan?
And also,
ang taas-taas ng presyo, ibig sabihin, may problema siya. Kasi kung totoong natural monopoly siya, tunay na mura siya. So kung tignan natin at hindi siya tunay na mura, may problema. Ibig sabihin, hindi talaga siya natural monopoly and therefore, isubject na natin siya to yardstick competition. Hindi naman necessarily competition in a true sense na parang WESM. Hindi. Pwede naman yardstick competition eh. Iputol-putol mo yung regions, you can subject them to competition in the same way that we're doing yardstick competition for water. So, yun lang po, Mr. Chair. I mean, but
Mr. Chair, just to add, also, you can also look at it in the perspective of what are the functions of a transmission company. So there's a systems operator and the transmission assets that you can also divide. No? So there are ways to look at it, and well, it depends on the studies, but there might be a more suitable arrangement for our country, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
salamat, Mr. Chair.
Very much, Senior Vice Chair of APRO, the Honorable Stella Kimbo. The next interpolator is the Honorable Sergio Dagoc.
Mr. Chair, nakalimutan ko na yung tanong ko dahil 7 oras na ako tapos plus lamig pa.
Pwedeng magpa-swap muna kayo, tapos para maging 8 oras ko kayo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening po.
Good evening, everyone. Mag-focus na lang ako sa 3 subject matters. Yung mayroon tayong, kasi ito mahaba to, alam ko mahaba. Ang punterya natin dito ay paano matulungan yung power industry, particularly the Department of Energy. Kasi sila yung sinisingil ng taong bayan, anong ginagawa ninyo, DOE, ERC, bakit mahal? So, siguro, one thing yung hahanapan natin ng violation si NGCP, yung concessionaire, but the other thing is, ano ba yung immediate na pwede natin gawin while waiting sa result ng, kung halimbawa, i-review natin, i-revoke, etc. Mahaba yun eh. pero hindi makapaghintay yung tao. Ano ba yung magagawa natin immediate na pwedeng maibaba? Kasi medyo as a technical person, working in this industry for 40 years, medyo I am not totally agreeable na tututukan natin si NGCP, bababa na kaagad yung ano natin kasi napakaliit yung contribution ni transmission doon sa kabuuan na binabayaran natin.
Ano pong percentage doon?
10 lang eh.
10%.
Generation ang pinakaano, paulit-ulit ko na yan sinasabi dito sa Congress. Kaya we have filed bills since the 18th Congress. Saan ba yung puntarya natin para maipababa? Isa yung cross-ownership na yan eh. Yung cross-ownership. Ang dami nating pinapayagan na IPIRA was framed na hindi magkaroon ng kolosyon na yung distributor, generator pa, tas ngayon mukhang baka pupunta na naman tayo pabalik sa pre-IPIRA. So, balikan na muna natin yung objective ng IPIRA. Hindi naman sinasabi na after IPIRA, yung objective ay pababa. Sinasabi lang ng IPIRA, affordability, reasonable cost. Kaya would IRC agree, Mr. Chair, na ang least cost na sinasabi ay ano po bang ibig sabihin ng least cost? Mura ba? IRC, is the definition of least cost sa IPIRA mura?
ERC,
Mr.
reply.
Chair, least cost as used in the EPIRA refers to the cost of supply for the captive consumers, di ba po? So, yun pong least cost, yung pinakamura dun sa pinagkukumparahan.
Agree. So, it is does not necessarily mean na mura siya. Kaya, ang term na ginamit ni IPIRA, affordable, reasonable. Kasi, if the IRC will agree, kaya natin bininta yung assets ng Napocor, kaya natin chinapchap siya, kasi na-memorize ko pa yung pinaka-original objective ng IPIRA sa committee pa ni Freddy Webb. No? We need to do this because this is the only way to stop the government's bleeding, financial bleeding in subsidizing the losing operation of Napocor. Yun ang kaya ang sigaw namin noon, because we are against IPIRA, ay kung may problema yung Napocor, kung yung bahay mo may anay, bakit mo susunugin yung bahay mo? Dapat yung anay lang ang i-cure mo. What we mean is, together with the UP, sabi namin, ang i-overhaul lang natin yung charter ng Napocor. Sinong paupuin diyan sa Napocor? So, hindi yung, kita mo, we are comparing other jurisdictions and our country. Eh, mura talaga sila because highly subsidized, if the IRC will agree, is the main cause of the lower power cost in other jurisdiction. Is it because of their law or because their electricity cost is highly subsidized by the government?
Mr. Chair, based on our review, it's really the subsidies, particularly for the oil-producing countries.
Ayun. Kaya noon, mura, sinasabi natin, IPIRA tapos nagmahal. Dahil Napocor ang generation, Napocor ang transmission. Tatlo lang ang sektor dati. Generation, Napocor, transmission, Napocor. Then, sa distribution, may private, may electric cooperatives. So, dalawang sektor na malaki ang hawak ni government. Yung generation, 50 to 55% yon sa sinisingil. Plus transmission, 10%. Eh, yung hawak ni government, 65 na kaagad. So, that's why, mura noon. Dahil, sinusubsidize ng GAA yung operasyon ni Napocor. But now, sinapsap natin eh. Tapos, dinagdagan pa natin ng RAS, Retail Electricity Supply, na pang-apat na sektor. Kaya mahirap mo i-review yung performance ng bawat sektor in the power industry as a point of information, Mr. Chair, Pag nireview mo kasi yung, halimbawa sa distribution sector, mahirap mong i-review yun, interruption, outages. Kasi kung may problema si generation, wala kang ma-distribute. May generation, may problema si transmission, wala kang ma-distribute. Okay, i-review mo yung transmission, si NGCP. Ay, paano kung hahanapan mo ng ancillary, walang planta? So, failure ngayon yung transmission. Ngayon, kung hindi magbabayad yung distribution kay NGCP, may problema din si NGCP doon sa mga capex niya. Ngayon, kung madili yung nila sa regulator, yung approval ng mga transmission development plan, may problema din sila. Kasi kabit-kabit po yung apat na sektor. They are interconnected with each other. Kaya napakahirap na i-review mo yung performance individually kasi yung individual sector mayroong interconnected function doon sa other sector at lahat ng yon konektado sa regulator. So, yan po yung kahirapan niya. Kaya, I will not dwell on that, napakahaba yung na yan. Uunahin natin yung sa mga delayed projects para malinaw lang. Kasi yung mga hindi nakakaintindi, pag sinabing delayed, kasalanan na kaagad ni NGCP. Dapat patas naman tayo dito. So, kung halimbawa, ano bang definition doon sa presentation ng Department of Energy? Pag sinabi niyong delayed, doon mag-recon yung delay sa approval. Sa approval na.
We based the delay based on the transmission development plan. Kung kailan
Not on the approval?
No, on the transmission development plan.
So, doon pa lang, no? Kahit mag-file ako ngayon, like in the DDP namin, if that is the case, sa pag-review, ay papalpak talaga. Imagine, 2011 na DDP namin, hanggang ngayon, I hope hindi pa naman time niya to, pero siya ngayon nakaupo, nag-catch up nga sila, I agree with her, na mayroon pa kaming mga DDP, CAPEX, 2011, na wala pang desisyon. Tumba na yun. 4 na bagyo na, pinalitan yung mga poste na yun, pero yung CAPEX. So, those are the things na beyond the control of the sector. Whether you are a transmission operator, a distribution utility, ay yung mga infrastructure na yan ay beyond your control yung approval. So that should be considered supposed to be in the review. Kasi kung ako, no, with all due respect, doon ko i-recon yung delay sa approval ng regulator. Na in-approve ko na to, inalaw na kayo na mangulikta, tapos hindi nyo pa nagawa. Pero kung doon mo i-recon sa, I hope na tama yung information na ang reckoning sa pag-consider na delay ay I hope na yung approval, hindi yung transmission development plan. Tama po ba, Chair Mona, na sa base sa transmission development plan, hindi sa approval ninyo?
Mr. Chair, the report is based on the transmission development plan. True enough, merong cases na approved na hindi pa na-approve ng ERC, and that's causing the delay. But there are many projects in which NGCP is already charging the consumers na hindi pa rin tapos, na delayed pa rin siya. For example, ito Gigarao project, the Luzon Loop project, marami po yan. Nagbabayad na po tayo. Tayo po, lahat-lahat po, nagbabayad na, pero delayed po yung project. Hindi pa rin tapos. Iba nga hindi pa naumpisa, nagcha-charge na.
So, ibig sabihin nga, Mr. Chair, ang reckoning nung delay is upon the approval of ERC. Itong project na to ay approved na, tapos pinakolekta na kayo. Kasi ang pagkakalam ko, hindi pwedeng mangulikta any of the regulated sector na walang approval sa ERC. Imposible po yun na mauna kang mangulikta bago i-approve. So, ang pagkakaintindi ko, I approve this whether provisionally or final approval, so mangulikta na kayo. So, doon tayo mag-umpisa pag-recon na nadidelay na siya. Tama po ba yun, Chair Muna, Mr. Chair?
Sir Chair, tama po. Tama naman po na, for instance, yun pong minanggit ko kanina na first time nag-penalize si ERC ng delayed NGCP projects. Ang reckoning po namin doon, ERC approval po. So, yun pong, I think yung binabanggit ni Yusek Sharon is how they have determined based yung ni-report po niya. But kami po sa ERC, yung basis ng penalty, yung approval. Kasi aware naman po kami, di kami makakapag-penalize kung kami mismo po in delay of acting on the application. Pero mabanggit ko lang din po na for example, noon pong nag-approve po yung ERC ng IMAR, ng interim MAR, noong 2022, automatic po yun, in-include niya yung mga EPNS, yung mga projects of national significance. Pero karamihan po din doon sa mga projects na yon, so inallow na po yun sa IMAR, sa interim MAR. Hindi pa rin po nako-complete hanggang ngayon. So ibig sabihin po, kasama na siya sa inallow na nire-recover sa atin, china-charge, pero hindi pa rin po nako-kompleto. Meron pa nga pong mga projects hindi pa nasisimulan po hanggang ngayon.
So yun na nga, Mr. Chair, na ang nilinaw ko lang dito na pag sinabi mong delay, ang reckoning period should be upon the clearance, go signal, green light ng ERC, whether provisionally or finally approved. Doon ka mag-umpisa na sasabihin mo na delay, hindi yung sa transmission development plan pa. Tama po ba ang pagkakaintindi ko? Dapat consistent kasi si DOA doon sa roles ni ERC na yung may approval lang niya ang makonsider na delay kung hindi ma-implement. Pero kung TDP pa, kasi kanina nga, I hope na ma-correct yung kanina narinig ko na sabi ni NGCP, sino yung resource person kanina na pagkatapos daw nila sa technical working group, ma-determine na yung mga projects na yon, yan yung papasok sa kanilang transmission development plan, tas ipapile nila sa ERC. May mali po doon may kulang po doon Kasi after nila matapos yung TDP nila, isasalang pa po yun sa Department of Energy. Si DOE po ang mag-determine doon kung kailan ipasok to, yung mga ganon. Kasi mayroon po akong side proposal diyan sa Ang tama po, Mr. Chair, is I hope ARC kindly correct me if I'm wrong. Hindi po diretso yung TDP nila i-file sa inyo. Dadaan po sa DOE. Tama po ba yun?
Tama po. Hindi naman po fina-file ni NGCP po sa amin yung TDP.
Yun. Kasi yun ang sabi kanina ng NGCP. Nakinig lang ako. So, dadaan po sa kanila. Now, ang sinasabi ko na side comment ko doon, kanina narinig ko si Yusek Sharon na sabi niya, yung mga planta tapos na. Tapos wala pa kasing transmission line. That is also my issue. However, umpisahan natin, ano ba yung mag-trigger ng mga GENCO? Anong agency sila, ang ibig kong sabihin, saang agency sila lalapit? Una, kapag gusto nilang magtayo ng planta, renewable or whatever kind of technology, ano yung unang agency ng gobyerno na lalapitan nila?
DOE, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so DOE. So, ano yung kauna-unahang dokumento na i-issue ni DOE para mag-umpisa na yung GENCO to develop the power plant? Service contract ba? Ano ba yun?
They need a service contract, Mr. Chair, for renewable energy, and for that, one of the requirements is an SIS also, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so
Which comes from NGCP.
So ngayon, alam na ngayon ng Department of Energy, sino-sino yung mga planta, ano yung capacity, at saka saang lokasyon yung planta. Alam na DOE. Tama po ba, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So, ngayon kasi, may narinig ako kanina sa kasamahan natin na dapat kasi monopoly to dapat pababa yung cost. And we are investigating the NGCP. So I'm sure na NGCP ang tinutukoy na dapat pababa yung cost. Na may question sa IRC. Tama po ba yung prinsipyo na yon na kapag dahil sa transmission natin ay monopoly, ay pababa yung cost natin dapat?
Mr. Chair, my understanding there is it was in reference to economies of scale. So kung isa ka lang na monopolyo ka, isa ka lang nag-ooperate, meron kang, pwede mo ma-take advantage yung economies of scale. Ganun ko po yun na naintindihan.
But is it true in as far as the transmission operation is concerned? Is it really true? Kasi alam ninyo kayo yung regulator na may bababa nila. Talaga.
Mr. Chair, kasi ngayon lang po nga, matagal nga pong hindi na bisita yung rates ni NGCP. So ngayon pa lang po. But siguro po, kung naiintindihan ko po yung tanong ng tama, ang pinatutunguhan po, pag marami yung project, malaki yung gastos, pinapalaki niya yung system, edi mas malaki po yung cost na ire-require.
Yes, I agree. Kasi ang pagko-compute kasi ng transmission charge, it's the cost divided by the sales. Tama po ba, IRC, Mr. Chair?
Tama po, in simple terms po.
So, kung halimbawa yung cost ng project is 1 million, tapos yung 1 million pesos, yung sales natin sa buong bansa is 1 million kilowatt hour, the cost of that project at that time is 1 peso per kilowatt hour. Tama po ba, Mr. Chair? ERC?
Kung diretsahan lang pong cultivation.
So, yung pinaka-basic lang, kasi it depends on the sales, energy sales. So ngayon, mayroon tayong inisyuhan na mga bagong planta na doon kayo kung saan-saan. Ang unang tanong ko sa Department of Energy, matagal ko ng issue to, kasama ba yon sa coordination natin sa NGCP tuwing gagawa sila ng Transmission Development Plan para makonsider na nila sa planning na mayroon palang planta na maitatayo in 2 years' time, 3 years' time. Kasama po ba yon, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, yes, Mr. Chair, and we rely on their knowledge and expertise on that. Alam nila po yan, sir.
I will ask NGCP. Lahat po ba ng inisyuhan ng Department of Energy na mga permits na magtayo ng planta, nakatimbre po ba sa inyo? Kasama na yung schedule of commissioning ng planta. Kasi kailangan po yun eh. Kasi kung naranasan ko po yun as managing a distribution utility, may policy kami na kayo mga big loads, pag pupunta kayo sa Siargao, sa Dinagat, na yung load ninyo ay more than 10 kilowatt, ipaalam nyo na in advance sa amin para may kontrata na namin yan in advance. Kasi hindi madali yung pangungontrata. It will take 2 to 3 years na magpa-approve ng power supply agreement. Anong may supply ninyo kung nag-ooperate na kayo ng resort, ngayon lang kayo pumunta sa amin? Same thing, may planta tayo, may issue tayo na permit na magtayo kayo ng planta, dapat well coordinated yan sa transmission operator kasi sila yung magtatayo ng tie line, transmission line. So, regular ba yung coordination na lahat ng mga bagong on a monthly basis, for example, may na-issue yung Department of Energy ng mga permit magtayo ng planta, na i-forward ba kaagad sa inyo yon?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Doon po sa mga plantang mga papasok po at kukonect sa grid, meron pong process po yan online na po, part po ng EVOS, yung online transmission connection application. So yun po very transparent, malalaman po namin kung sino na yung nag-apply, nasa ang stage na sila, malapit na ba matapos. So depende po kung nasa ang stage na po ng application.
Good, if that is the case, no? Good. Now, dahil nakita nyo na, kasama ba yon sa TDP na sinasubmit niyo sa Department of Energy?
Opo, yung mga planta po na yon, isa po yan sa project drivers ni NGCP. Kung kailangan po nila ng transmission project para ma-accommodate sila.
Para for the interest of time, kasama po ba yon tuwing nagsasubmit kayo ng TDP sa Department of Energy for the review, kasama po ba yung sabi mo, naka-online naman yan dahil nakikita ninyo, kasama lahat yan sa consideration sa TDP ninyo?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Wala naman po palang problema. Alam naman po pala ninyo. Ngayon, ang second stage, dahil sila, DOE ang mag-determine anong year ito ma-implement. Pagka na-file nyo sa ARC niyan, ilang taon po na-approve? Nakukuha po ba ng target ng DOE? Halimbawa, 2024 yung planta mag-online. Definitely, dahil advance yung TDP natin, baka 2020 pa kayo or 2021 pa kayo nakapile. Ilang taon po? Na-approve po ba yung TDP ninyo bago na-ready yung planta? In your experience?
Nabanggit ko po, Mr. Chair, kanina, no, yung project, ginagawa po namin once we have the information kung kailan po pasok yung planta. May mga planta po kasi mabilis i-construct and kaya po minsan na...
Wag mo nang ulitin yon, wag mo nang balikan. Nasa ARC stage na tayo. Okay na tayo.